Hokage, Chronicle of the True Farewell. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 276, C. Oh, isn't this Master Scorpion? Watching as Miyashiro and used water shot to scatter the red-haired boy's sand clones, the intricately crafted hand cannon fell to the ground with a clatter. Uchiha Chi immediately rushed forward, attempting to pick up the exquisitely crafted hand cannon. However, at that moment, the image from his mind's eye caused him to pause. The man who had just attacked Miyashiro and had sneaked up behind him using Earth-style mind reflection. It was clear he wasn't a serious person. However, Uchiha Chi simply curled his lips into a smile and simply ignored him. He continued to pick up the exquisite hand cannon from the pile of sand. He gazed at the object in his hands with amazement, touching it here and there. After all, it was a gun. How rare. In his previous life, Uchiha Chi had only seen such things in movies and TV shows. This was the first time he had ever touched one, and in the ninja world. He suddenly became as excited as a child, glancing at the delicate components of the pistol, the sandalwood stock, the steel trigger, the flint clip, the steel, the dark barrel, and the lingering sulfur smell of a freshly fired round. He was thrilled. But then, with a swish, the ground beside him suddenly cracked. Scorpion leaped out and saw Uchiha Chi, groping at the pistol he had crafted, as if he had found a treasure. At that moment, Scorpion seemed to have a slight hallucination. It was as if, in this blinded kid, he saw his childhood playmate, Zio-chan, who had once held the puppet arm he had crafted with a look of wonder. At that moment, Scorpion's gaze darkened, as if recalling some unpleasant memory. Zio-chan was Scorpion's childhood best friend. He admired Scorpion, the village prodigy, and was inseparable from their childhood. He adored the puppet arm Scorpion crafted. However, Scorpion's sincerity towards his friend was chilling. Through an accident, Scorpion caused Zio-chan's arm to be severed, replacing it with a puppet arm of his own creation. Later, in an accident, Zio-chan suffered from poisoning and inflammation from overuse of the puppet arm, forcing Scorpion to undergo surgery. Determined to keep his friend and pursue his art, Scorpion finally fulfilled his wish and transformed him into a human puppet. Today, jealousy of Zio-chan's parents' health, fueled by his own death, leads to a sinister act that has brought him artistic success but also cost him his best friend. Ultimately, Scorpion feels no regrets, though a touch of loneliness remains. At that moment, his surging emotions finally materialized. The little devil before him, like the little bug that had once marveled at the things he'd created, was no longer the helpless Scorpion. Now, he had grasped the eternal path, his art boundless to his death. He had no need for such weak emotions. He drew the twin pistols from his waist, his eyes instantly filled with determination as he aimed them at the boy's head. And then, Scorpion's mouth curled up. Kid, times have changed. It sounded like he was speaking to Uchiha Chi, or to the boy who had once admired him, or more like a decisive word to his own wavering heart. Bang! Bang! A violent burst of gunfire erupted. The bullets were loaded with armor-piercing ninjutsu bullets, a fusion of wind and earth chakra. Within 7 steps, they were incredibly fast. A single shot, a single impact, would cause earth spikes to burst from within, blasting the man into a hedgehog. The wind blade would first rip a bloody hole through the imp's head, and then the earth and rock at the core of the bullet would explode from the center, shattering the imp's head like a broken watermelon. However, bang! Bang! White smoke erupted from the muzzle, obscuring everything in sight. 2 sudden sounds, like crashing against steel, echoed. 2 chakra bullets fired from the muzzle, sending a shower of sparks through the white mist. Then, swish, swish. The earth-spiked bullets, materializing, streaked past Scorpion's cheek and flew out in a parabola. Scorpion was startled. Then, before his eyes, a bright light flashed. It was the color of the sun, like streaks of blazing flames billowing before his eyes. In an instant, whoosh, a fierce, high-temperature storm struck him head-on, squeezing, dispersing, and scattering the smoke from the muzzle. A massive bony palm, composed of flaming bones, blasted away the smoke, and with speed that broke the sound barrier, it grasped Scorpion tightly. Scorpion's pupils shrank instantly, and he saw a thick skeleton, composed of bones resembling human sternums, ablaze with flames, appearing around the blind imp. His two bullets struck the flaming skeleton that had appeared on the imp's forehead, only creating a shallow dent. And that dent was healing at a visible speed. Staring at the terrifying thing before him, Scorpion was stunned, muttering dazedly, "What is this?" At that moment, Uchiha Chi, who had bent down to pick up his pistol, still unharmed by the skeleton, turned around, raised his pistol, and aimed the dark muzzle at the attacker's brow. Observing the attacker's appearance with his mind's eye, seeing that he was only slightly inferior to himself in looks and red hair, Uchiha Chi raised an eyebrow slightly. He looked at the handsome red-haired boy held by the skeleton Susanoo and immediately recognized him. Wasn't this the legendary Scorpion of the Red Sand, the man who had killed the third Hokage? He couldn't help but smile. "Hey, isn't that Master Scorpion?" Hearing this, he saw the young man before him holding the gun he had crafted to his forehead. In an instant, the situation reversed. Scorpion went from attacker to prisoner. For no apparent reason, just coming out of his trance, he glared at Uchiha Chi with a broken heart. A burning pain rose on his face, as if he had been slapped in the face by his own art. "You, don't touch my art with your dirty hands." However, looking at the exasperated Scorpion, Uchiha Chi suddenly laughed. Bang! A gunshot. Uchiha Chi pulled the trigger without hesitation. Scorpion, who had just begun to curse, swallowed hard, instinctively withdrawing his gaze to glance at the muzzle at his ear. Uchiha Chi, on the other hand, gazed excitedly at the pistol in his hand. He couldn't help but glance at Scorpion, who had calmed down after forcing back the curses that were about to burst out of his throat. "Sure enough, this thing still works," Uchiha Chi grinned. "But, for now, I don't need a puppeteer to make toys. I just need an obedient guide." Then, he slightly lifted his eyelids from beneath the black cloth and suddenly opened a pair of cross-shaped Sharingans, surrounded by 3 jet black Magatama. Through the black cloth, he met Scorpion's true form with his gaze. And then, Jinjutsu, Sharingan. Instantly activated. Huh? Jinjutsu? Where did it come from? Scorpion's face suddenly changed color. Before he could understand what was happening, he felt as if he had been hit on the forehead by a huge club. His head tilted back and he lost consciousness. Then, Uchiha Chi turned his head and smiled at the gloomy and despicable Uchiha Chi who was still cursing at the side. "Old Bang, look, the ready-made guide is here." Chapter 277 Scorpion, I want to kill Uchiha Chi. See, huh? The fluttering of seabirds echoed in his ears, a captivating aroma lingered at his nose, and his stomach growled, startling him awake. Scorpion suddenly regained consciousness. Then, he felt a sharp jerk in his head, as if he had been struck by some kind of distorting magic. Not a pupil technique, but an illusion that distorts all 5 senses, he wondered, his body tensing. But as he took a closer look, he realized the dull ache in his forehead was real, not an illusion. At this moment, Scorpion, who was still pretending to be unconscious with his eyes closed, suddenly heard the conversation of 2 people next to him. At this moment, Uchiha Chi looked at the big bump on Scorpion's forehead and exclaimed in surprise, "Kid, you didn't beat him to death?" And Uchiha Chi looked helpless. It's unfair. Who knew that illusions didn't work on him? So physical hypnosis is the only option. You have good eyesight, you use illusions. Uchiha Chi turned his head away, stretched out his fingers to tease his daughter beside him, and pouted, "Why, I don't want to. I have to take care of my daughter." Uchiha Chi shook his head, explaining and urging, "His brain has been modified by the subbrain sand, and it's hard for me to control it. He's about to wake up now, hurry up." You hypnotize him. Although his eyes have evolved, his illusion ability is still the same, and the eyes in the fusion process cannot use the Senjutsu Sharingan White Eye, otherwise, why would he give this guy a brain blow? Skeleton Susanoo version? After hearing Uchiha Chi's explanation, Miyashiro glanced at Scorpion, who was pretending to be dead on the ground, and said calmly, "Look, isn't he awake now? Besides, it's not a big deal. After all, we just wanted to ask for directions." Uchiha Chi raised an eyebrow, looking at Miyashiro in surprise. Tisk, you're being so tolerant now. This guy, wasn't he the ruthless one who killed his own clan? Now why does he look like a temperless office worker and daughter slave? But Uchiha Chi thought again. That's right, Miyashiro is indeed an honest man. It's just that when he encountered all the trouble in his clan, He got so angry that he finally exploded in anger and slaughtered his entire clan. Putting himself in Miyashiro En's shoes, Uchiha Chi felt that if he were in Miyashiro En's shoes, he would do even more extreme things than Miyashiro En. From this perspective, this guy is not unmatched. As Uchiha Chi rubbed his chin in thought, Scorpion, lying on the ground, knew he couldn't play dead any longer. Besides, the two men before him didn't seem to harbor any ill will towards him. He didn't bother pretending anymore, simply opening his eyes and straightening himself. Then, with a cold glance at Uchiha Chi, who was covered in a black cloth, he demanded, "Can you see?" Hearing this question, Uchiha Chi raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Of course I can see. I'm not blind, Scorpion. If you're not blind, why are you covering yourself with a black cloth?" Uchiha Chi immediately argued, "It's called fashion. You don't know shit." But in reality, the black cloth covering his eyes was mainly because his blood dragon eyes and Sharingan hadn't yet completed their fusion evolution, making them sensitive to light. Especially when paired with his Susanoo, which shone like a tiny sun, the blinding effect was even more dazzling. Furthermore, a new eye technique is being nurtured within these eyes. And the eyes themselves need some time to rest. Furthermore, Uchiha Chi possesses the mind's eye, so closing his eyes actually allows for clearer vision. Furthermore, it can also have a certain effect of confusing the enemy. After all, look at this handsome red-haired man before you, isn't he already been tricked? Okay, Uchiha, tell him business. At this time, because of the quarrel between the two, his daughter's expression changed. Seeing that she was about to cry out, Uchiha En quickly raised his hand to mediate between the two. Then, he looked at Scorpion and explained calmly, "After all, it is a time of war. I can understand that you would take the initiative to attack a ninja you don't know, but we don't mean to hurt you. We just want to." Hearing this, Scorpion narrowed his eyes and interrupted with a cold snort, "Oh? From what you said, do you think you can beat me? If it weren't for this blind kid, you would have been killed by me." The battle of ninjas is a battle of intelligence. Because they have developed epic-making weapons and have been invincible with them, Scorpion chose to use that kind of fighting method. He hadn't anticipated that the opponent was a ninja with a kendo technique, and with Uchiha Chi standing by to warn him, he lost his move. Then, deceived by Uchiha Chi's outward appearance, he fell for the brat's scheme and was caught. But in reality, his true trump card hadn't even been revealed yet. Scorpion was actually very unwilling to lose this battle. The unprecedented kendo technique of this tall, antique young man, and the flaming skeleton that emerged from the brat's body were all information he had never known. In another battle, facing Uchiha alone, Scorpion was confident he wouldn't lose. Hearing these blunt words, even the good-tempered Uchiha frowned slightly, his expression darkening. His gaze towards Scorpion gradually turned hostile. At this moment, Uchiha Chi spoke calmly, "If you want to die, no one will stop you, but I will help him kill you. Also, we need you as a guide to lead us to the capital of the Land of Lightning, Yunming City. If you don't want to, you can die here and now. Believe me, I'm not kidding." Uchiha Chi stared at Scorpion with a sullen gaze. He knew Scorpion's trump card, a human puppet created from the third Kazakage, known as the strongest Kazakage, stored in one of the two scrolls he carried on his back. But Uchiha Chi didn't remove it after knocking Scorpion unconscious. Simply because it didn't matter. Scorpion, still a human, hadn't yet transformed himself into a human puppet, nor had he mastered the 100 machines maneuvering and the defensive puppets like the salamander. Even with the third Kazakage's deadly weapon, he was no match for the combined power of him and Miyashiro En. The puppeteer's most vulnerable part is his true form. Now that his true form is exposed, facing the two men's eye techniques, Scorpion has no choice but to seize the opportunity to let the Sandame Kazakage carry him away, or he'll be doomed. It's not that his Sharingan can't hypnotize Scorpion, but that forcibly overcoming the subconscious mind control in his mind would turn Scorpion into a fool. This goes against his will, and there's no benefit in killing him. The method for creating chakra cores in the human puppetry technique had long been revealed by Eberzo's master. Attacking a puppet like the Sandame Kazakage, who lacks self-awareness, would likely trigger heart steel, let alone unleash magnetic release. It's pointless. Besides, as Uchiha Chi had just said, Scorpion, still in his developmental stages, is nothing more than a puppeteer making toys. That's the truth, nothing more. And then, hearing Uchiha Chi's words, Scorpion fell silent. He could still handle that tall, old-fashioned young man, but what about this brat he couldn't figure out? And, Scorpion suddenly thought of what Yuashiro-en had just said, and of the Uchiha he'd mentioned when addressing the brat. He narrowed his eyes, his gaze fixed on Uchiha-C's tattered clothing. Seeing the red and white clan crest emblazoned on it, he asked coldly, "Are you from the Uchiha clan? What's your relationship with Uchiha-C, the young patriarch who fell off a cliff in Hell Valley and disappeared?" Yuashiro-en was stunned by this, glancing at Uchiha-C. Fallen off a cliff, disappeared, and the young patriarch of the Uchiha clan? So this brat was quite someone. And his name, so it turned out to be Uchiha-C? Uchiha-C was also a little confused for a moment. He didn't expect that Scorpion didn't confront Uign anymore, but turned the spearhead to question himself. He couldn't help but ask in confusion, "Why are you looking for Uchiha-C?" Scorpion sneered, narrowed his eyes, stared at Uchiha-C dangerously, and quietly pressed his palm on the second scroll behind him, untied the rope buckle on it, and rolled it slightly. The scroll unfolded, revealing the word 3. What a coincidence, I'm on my way to the daimyo mansion of Yunming City in the Land of Lightning. Kill Uchiha-C, huh? Uchiha-C's brows jumped slightly, and he couldn't help coughing. I see, your goal is the same. Seeing that Scorpion's eyes were a little surprised and a little suspicious, Uchiha-C said righteously, "Don't get me wrong, I'm not that guy. My name is Uchiha Fugaku, of course. This trip out of the village is a secret. I have another nickname. You can call me Uchiha Yanzu." Hearing this, Scorpion's eyes swept over Uchiha-C for a moment, and after thinking for a while, he nodded knowingly. Uchiha Yanzu? He Uchiha Fugaku. He knew this person. This was the unlucky guy whose position as the patriarch was snatched away by Uchiha-C. The captain of the Konoha police department, the Uchiha clan's original designated next head, and the second in command of the Uchiha clan whose glory was eclipsed by Uchiha-C. This guy's trip to Yunming City was likely to confirm whether the Uchiha-C there was indeed the missing Uchiha-C. And this guy's desire to kill Uchiha-C was probably also to seize the position of head of the ninja world's most powerful clan. This also explains why this guy before him was so powerful. Thinking of this, Scorpion couldn't help but sneer. Huh, what a boring drama, but it suits my taste. Chapter 278. All parties gathered in Yunming City. On the night of the Battle of Hell Valley that caused Uchiha-C's disappearance, the daimyo far away in Daimyofu, the capital of the Land of Lightning, was once again assassinated by the undead evil leader Uchiha-C. The guardian Nin was killed, and if the third Hokage's son Ele had not intervened in time, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning almost died. In addition, during the Battle of Hell Valley, Orochimaru launched the Kumagakure collapse plan in the Hidden Cloud Village, which caused a large-scale leak of the Land of Lightning's defense data. At this moment, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning is already furious. At night, in the dilapidated town of the Frost Country, Uign and Uchiha-C sat around a campfire listening to Scorpion narrate the major events that had happened in recent days. A rough hand-drawn map was spread out in front of the three of them. At this moment, Scorpion raised his finger, pointed at the Hidden Cloud Village on the map, and swiped all the way to Yunming City, located in the core of the Land of Lightning. A week later, the third Hokage will take his son to Kumo City to apologize to the daimyo. At the same time, a new attack plan will be agreed with the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Hearing this, Uchiha couldn't help but feel a little confused. After suffering heavy losses, why is Kumagakure continuing to wage war? Shouldn't they be on guard against other major powers taking advantage of their misfortune? My humble opinion, Scorpion snorted coldly. Although Kumagakure has suffered heavy losses this time, the core fighting force of the A and B combination, as well as the third Hokage, and the Kumagakure army still have the strength to fight. But in this era, if you don't fight, you die. If you can't use this opportunity to demonstrate Kumagakure's strength to the outside world, we will truly face a wall of pushovers. Uchiha-C nodded slightly, squinting his eyes at the map. So, the most critical question now is which direction should Kumagakure, which still has the strength to fight, attack, and this matter will be confirmed after the Hokage and the daimyo have reached an agreement. So, the daimyo's attitude becomes the most crucial link in this. Scorpion glanced at Uchiha-C in surprise, then said calmly, yes, so, at this time, many people will want to probe the daimyo of the Land of Lightning's attitude. In this process, the immortal evil Uchiha-C, who assassinated the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, has become a token of allegiance, an opportunity to present his head to the daimyo. As Shisui spoke, he watched Uchiha-C from the corner of his eye, trying to discern any clues from his face. There were still many doubts about the identity of this Uchiha Yanzu. Uchiha Chi remained calm. He certainly wouldn't tell Shisui that one of them was targeting the daimyo, and the other was almost as well. However, he was still a little confused. He looked up at Shisui and asked, "What's going on with these immortal evil Uchiha Chi? This should be their second attempt on the daimyo, right? How did they escape?" Uchiha Chi knew that the immortal evil Uchiha Chi was a group recruited by his younger brother, Hidden. However, to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning twice and escape unscathed was a bit outrageous. Uchiha Chi was well aware of the fighting power of the evil god cult's Soup Ninjas. Their strength was truly mixed. The strongest among them, Hayato Togo, wouldn't even be able to withstand a single blow from the Raikage's son, Ai, let alone the third Raikage. Any elite jounin from a large village would be a piece of cake. Who knows? Perhaps someone is helping him. Scorpion chuckled and spread his hands. Then, staring gravely at the campfire, he asked, "So, the most crucial question now, Uchiha Chi and Miyashiro and simultaneously turned their heads to look at Scorpion. The most crucial question? What else could be the most crucial question? Everything was ready. All that was left was for Scorpion to lead the two brothers to the daimyo's mansion. With a flurry of hacking, he would first capture the third Raikage, then slay the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Then, by stomping on the heads of young Ai and Killer Bee, they would sing conquer, let the entire ninja world know that the era of Gundam had arrived." Facing the two's expectant gazes, Scorpion was silent for a moment, lowering his head. He hesitated for a moment as he gazed at the map beside him, then muffledly asked, "Who among you can understand this map?" Miyashiro and Uchiha Chi exchanged glances, their faces stiffening simultaneously. They could see the muscles at each other's lips twitching. "No, buddy, you're directionally challenged too." So, the three, who had just been about to set off, sat down again, a silence lingering. Elsewhere, in the Lightning Kingdom's capital, Yunming Castle. Its general structure resembled Tansho Castle in the Fire Kingdom, a typical ancient Japanese castle, divided into two walls, the inner and outer castles. The inner castle housed the daimyo's castle tower, towering walls and heavily fortified. The outer castle, on the other hand, was a scene of prosperity, its walls short and low, more symbolic than practical. It was bustling with people, a mixed crowd, and numerous carriages and stalls. The cities of the Land of Lightning are all situated in open areas nestled among towering peaks. Their architecture resembles a flattened onion, with platforms built into the mountainside, pointed spires, and indoor dwellings beneath them, reminiscent of a Byzantine style. Merchants often meet and commoners set up stalls beneath buildings suspended between the peaks, pitching tents or using haka-style structures built around the mountain tops as venues for their activities, as shown in the picture. At this moment, on a narrow terrace on a peak outside Yunming City's outer walls, a hooded Hiden leaned against the fence, his expression grim as he gazed down at the street below. A line of Kumagakure ninjas, accompanied by a group of ninjas wearing forward protectors from the Tanin Rebellion, passed by, heading towards the recently constructed execution ground, the busiest area in the outer city. Damn it, looking at his companions, who had followed him and died one after another because of him, for so-called righteousness, Hidden clenched his fists shaking. Bang! He slammed his hands on the guardrail in hatred. At this moment, he finally understood why that bastard Uchiha Chi abandoned him. After seeing the vast expanse of water in Tangayan City, the capital of Tang Country, he should be in the same mood as he is now. He will blame himself for all this and doubt the oath he made in the past. That's why he didn't know how to face himself, why he left Tang Country, and why he ignored the oath he made in the past. Even now, the person may be dead. But it doesn't matter. He will avenge this hatred. Since the third Raikage killed his eldest brother, he will kill the Raikage's son and the daimyo of their country. Blood debt must be paid with blood. However, at this moment, with a rising sun reflected on the horizon, a slender figure wearing a black robe and a high-brimmed hat slowly walked over from behind Fidun. A few wisps of long brown red hair as red as the morning sun were scattered from the side corners of the hat. In the shadow under the hat, a pair of clear green eyes that seemed to reflect the human heart looked at Fidun. The person sighed softly. "Fidun, I can help you this time because of our friendship in the past. If you wrote to me for help just to save this group of soup ninjas, then I'm sorry that I can't help you anymore. Right now, this city is under close scrutiny from all sides. The four major countries of fire, earth, wind, and Thunder are sending envoys, various organizations, and everyone wants to take your head to complete their plans. If you continue to be so willful, I will knock you out now and take you away from this place of trouble." Fedun shook his head, with a hint of unwillingness in his young eyes. "Sister-in-law, no." He gritted his teeth and pulled out a small, transparent blood bottle from his bosom. "I've already obtained the blood of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. In a week, if the daimyo still decides to continue the war and trample on the territory of our Land of Hot Springs, I will curse him to death at the Five-Nation talks." Madarumi was stunned, her pupils suddenly contracted, and her small face beneath her bamboo hat instantly flushed red. "What did you say?" I said. "I'm going to kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning at the Five-Nation talks." "No, the one before. I've got the blood of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning." "No, a little further, sister-in-law." Madarumi took a deep breath and smiled. "Okay, I'll help you kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning." Chapter 279. After 3 days of separation, everyone has grown. After agreeing to Hiden's request, promising to help him defeat the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, Madarumi, bracing herself with one hand on the fence, quickly leaped to the edge of the platform beyond. Her gaze cast a calm gaze over the distant area, watching the group of Union rebels being captured by the Kumagakure ninja and led away for execution. Then, tilting her head slightly, she offered Hiden a gentle smile. "Well, my sensible child, I'll give you another welcome gift. We rescue those people, too." Hiden was stunned by this. His heart, already gloomy and hopeless, suddenly felt like a ray of light. But just now, this woman had acted like she was going to die, practically slapping him unconscious and taking him away. But now, what was going on? Could the word sister-in-law have such a powerful effect? The thought of this made Hiden's heart warm, touched. Uchiha Chi, you're really helping me even until you die." Before Hiden could recover, a heavy hand slapped his shoulder, pulling him back. Then, Hiden was met with a cold face. A white-haired ninja, wearing a fodder protector with 4 water patterns and a canine tooth, bore an expression of indifference, as if everyone owed him 2.5 million. He stood tall, a massive, bandaged broadsword with 2 handles slung across his back. From this distinctive feature, Hiden immediately recognized it as the Kurigakure prodigy who had fought his eldest brother, Uchiha Chi, twice in a row, with the outcome still undecided. Hazuki Mainjutsu. Hiden had heard of this man, but had never seen him. Today was the first time he'd seen him. But shouldn't this guy be on their side? Then, Hiden heard, "Go to the room downstairs and stay still. The battle that's coming isn't for a junkie genin like you." Hazuki Mainjutsu stared at him coldly, like a butcher examining a piece of dead meat on a chopping block. He raised his hand and pointed behind him. There, 2 Kurigakure ninjas wearing Kumagakure fodder protectors and holding a set of very strong hemp ropes stared at Hiden. Seeing this, Hiden couldn't help but sweat dripping from his forehead. What was going on? Could it be that I'm just like what's written in the book, escaping the tiger's den and falling into the wolf's lair? If you want your people alive, tie your hands and cooperate with us. Mainjutsu Kazuna stared at Hiden calmly and indifferently, and said lightly, "A ninja should understand the so-called choice between advance and retreat, and besides, Kurigakure is not a charity. Do you really think that woman will lend a helping hand to you just because you met once? Even a 3-year-old child would not believe that kind of nonsense. So, you who have no power, actually have no choice. The only thing you can do, is to offer your head in exchange for the lives of those people, that's all." After hearing these words, Hiden was silent for a moment and closed his eyes. Then, he turned and glanced at the silent figure standing at the edge of the platform, her back to him. Yes, the so-called sacrifice. In the chaos of the Third Shinobi World War, in the interstices of the recently subsided war between the rock and the fog, during this period when his elder brother, Uchiha Chi, was unaware, absent, and even uncaring, Hiden had experienced it countless times. Every time he cast the curse of blood-based death, he relied on those who trusted him to sacrifice their lives to steal the enemy's blood. With the enemy, his friends and family far outnumbered his enemies. One life after another had propelled Hiden, a mere genin, to his current position, forcing him, a mere genin, to face the most powerful of the 5 great nations, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. How could he not understand the meaning of sacrifice? "I understand," Hiden let out a deep breath. Then, he raised his head, opened his brilliant lavender eyes, and bared his teeth at Hazuki Mainjutsu. "But, people like you don't understand, and won't understand, even for just one day, the bond between life and death forms a bond that can never be severed. Even if separated by thousands of miles or on opposing sides, it must exist in some form. Just wait and see. If that guy comes, I'll definitely trample that stinky face of yours under my feet. Hazuki Maingetsu watched Hiden, his bound hands tied, brush past him, then walk behind him. His single eye flickered for a moment, and then he snorted coldly. Ridiculous. Soon, only Madarumi and Hazuki Maingetsu remained on the platform. The sun gradually rose, illuminating the earth. Golden sunlight illuminated the still drowsy Yunming city, streaming across the peaks and the vast plains, illuminating the bustling and noisy execution ground. Staring in that direction, Maingetsu Hazuki squinted his eyes and asked the girl sitting on the railing, "Do you really believe that the blood that boy got is real?" Madarumi shook her head and calmly looked down at the city below that was gradually coming alive. Fake, standards, transformations, disguises. There are too many ways to avoid having your blood taken, especially when that person is the most noble person in this country. Then why did you help him? Maingetsu Hazuki asked in a deep voice. We came here all the way just to watch such a farce? Don't forget what kind of changes our village is going through now. Madarumi, even as you are now, there must be a limit to your willfulness. Madarumi didn't even turn her head, raised her hands to press on the railing to support her body and stood up. She raised the corners of her mouth wantonly in the wind and opened her arms, as if embracing this country. Maingetsu Hazuki, since you've chosen to trust me, why not continue to do so? Assassinating the daimyo is what we were destined to do, and isn't this exactly what you, having once again betrayed your master, expect and demand of me? Maingetsu Hazuki took a deep breath, his brow furrowed, a faint well-shape forming on his forehead. I admit that what that brat said back then had some truth to it, but I want to take down that indecisive, cumbersome daimyo of the land of water, and now, you're bringing me to the land of lightning to kill him? That's completely the opposite of what you're doing. Madarumi smiled faintly, raised her head, and gazed deep into the city, at the heavily fortified castle tower. This is an experiment. I want to test my inner thoughts, to determine the final answer to all disagreements, differences between you and me, differences within Kurigakure, differences over the future direction of war, a country without a daimyo, a country where everyone is a master, a brand new era, an era where ninjas are freed from their shackles. What will it be like? Just how must it be done? I want to see it with my own eyes. Facing the chill of the early morning breeze, Terumi Mei's eyes grew cold, and she spoke calmly. Even if it means the country beneath our feet crumbles. Hearing this exaggerated reason, in order to eliminate the daimyo of water, first eliminate the daimyo of lightning. Just to see what a country without a daimyo would become, and then, based on that, govern his own kingdom. Having received the answer, Hazuki Maingetsu felt a slight tingling in his scalp. His gaze upon Terumi Mei's back was filled with fear, deep fear. He had thought this girl, raised in Kurigakure's greenhouse, was just a vase. Until the war, forced to drag on by the Uchiha's resignation, arrived. In the dire circumstances of the three-way internal strife between Karatechi Yagura's Kirasame organization, the Sundai Mizukage, and the elders, each insisting they were the only ones capable of leading the misery to the future, the hidden mist village, caught in a precarious situation, faced a precarious fate. This young woman, facing the sudden onslaught of the Iwagakure, took to the battlefield, facing one near-death battle after another. And then, during that war, she encountered the five-tails Jinchuriki of Iwagakure. Everything changed. She mastered the ability to adjust the acidity of boiling release freely, and learned from the five-tails Jinchuriki how to control the boiling mist, truly developing boiling release to a mind-numbing degree. Ultimately, she mastered boiling release, unparalleled strength. A terrifying woman capable of battling tailed beasts with her own body, rapidly growing stronger. Possessing chakra comparable to that of a tailed beast, the strength of water release and dissolving release, she had made up for her last weakness in close combat. In that war, she outshone even Karuta Yagura. A genius like Maingetsu, she abandoned her laziness and devoted herself to becoming stronger. Under the radiance she radiated, and with her deep understanding of Uchiha Chi's outrageous words, her vision surpassed that of all the Kurigakure. Ultimately, he too chose to submit. Retracting his gaze, Maingetsu Hazuki was silent for a moment, then asked, "Then, why do you want to save that group of soup ninjas? They are too weak." In today's Yunming city, Such a force is not worth you exposing your own intelligence to take action. Terumi May turned her head, a cunning light flashed in her clear green eyes, and she smiled slightly. This group of soup ninjas are the last batch of evil god believers who followed Fiden, but they are not only evil god believers, they are also the arrogant villains who assassinated the Hokage. If they are here, then many people can use their names to take action against the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Maingetsu Hazuki was stunned. Many people, besides us, are there any other people who want to kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning? Terumi May let out a breath, turned her head helplessly, and glanced at Maingetsu Hazuki. Okay, stop complaining. Why are you always asking questions like Wing? It's annoying. I already have a marriage partner. As a subordinate, you should know how to avoid suspicion, understand, hurry up and do your work. We can unleash a mist hiddenjutsu at the execution ground. We won't even need to do anything. Someone will rescue them. Maingetsu raised an eyebrow, glancing at the chaotic scene. He raised his hand to grasp the hilts of the twin swords, Hiramaui, behind him. It's worth noting that his uncle, Chiba, who originally wielded the Hiramaui, had died in the recent war. He finally fulfilled his wish to become a member of the 7 ninja swordsmen and truly wield the swords. Preparing for battle, Maingetsu raised his head and looked at Terumi May, his lips curled up, revealing teeth as white as shark teeth. One last question, the future Yondaime, you said, that arrogant brat, is he still alive? Hearing this question, Terumi May fell silent for a moment. Then, she raised her head, her gaze determined. He won't die so easily, and this time, I won't be as powerless as before. Chapter 280, do you have to queue up to assassinate the daimyo? Theoretically, at ninja speed, the journey from the Frost Country to the Thunder Country's capital, Kumo City, should take less than half a day. However, this was for normal people, not for those with poor directions. Unable to locate their location on the map, they couldn't understand the crude map at all. After a long silence by the campfire, the Uchiha Chi team, a strangely formed group, finally chose the most foolish method. Both the Frost Country and the Thunder Country border the ocean. Simply following the coastline northward would inevitably lead them into the Thunder Country. While they would encounter numerous Kumo village checkpoints along the way, their superior agility made navigating them easy. After leaving the war-torn, uninhabited area and crossing one coastline after another, the three finally found a Thunder Country village. Well, not quite a village, but a group of ordinary people, former fishermen now bandits, prospering in this area. After extracting detailed route information from the other party and looting some money, the three finally arrived at the Thunder Kingdom's largest capital, Yunming City, at noon the next day. However, is the city sealed off? Temporarily no entry or exit, there are undead evildoers causing chaos, hijacking the execution ground, and they have a team of nearly 100 people. No, so besides the executioners, all the onlookers are enemies. As the three arrived at the city gates and asked passersby who were also stopped at the gates, Uchiha Chi learned such outrageous information. It left him a little bewildered. How could a small evil cult gather so many dedicated people? Is this the power of religion? The evil cult, which had been huddled in obscurity in the Hot Water Kingdom, had blossomed into a widespread presence in the Thunder Kingdom? Standing at the gate, Scorpion, wearing a conical hat, spoke calmly, "Sure enough, it's just as I expected." Uchiha Chi scratched his head, glanced at him and asked, "What do you mean?" At this point in time, there are many people who want the life of the daimyo of Lightning Country. They are all those who want to make trouble. Scorpion looked at the wanted list posted in front of the city gate and frowned. 4 other countries except the Fire Country. The most perfect option for the Thunder Country is to continue to attack the Fire Country. But now, because of the intelligence leak, Kumagakure continues to march towards Konoha, which is not good for the Thunder Country. Now, Kumagakure has 3 choices. One is to take advantage of the fights between other big countries to plunder the surrounding small countries, recuperate and wait for the next war. The second is to cross the sea to attack the Kurigakure, which is now in a period of civil unrest, and has fought a battle with Awakens before, which is a weak Kurigakure. The third is, well, it should be impossible. Scorpion shook his head, as if he thought of something. Uchiha Chi glanced at Scorpion, currently serving as the team's brains. Tisk, that's confusing. This is the daimyo, a powerful noble in this world. How could the battles of hired ninjas affect the daimyo? Who would dare risk such unpopularity and kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning? As he asked, Uchiha excluded himself and Miyashiro from the discussion, snorting and sniping at Scorpion. The ninja world system has remained unchanged for thousands of years. Besides those like him who disregard it, there are also those like Miyashiro who are direct victims of it. Ninjas, accustomed to the separation of military and political power, are unlikely to want to change it. Furthermore, although the original story doesn't describe it in detail, the daimyo should have his own armed forces. With all the constraints, attacking the daimyo would only do more harm than good. This would make even the superhumanly powerful ninjas wary. Thinking of the urgent difficulties in the Sand Village and the high-level officials who were controlled by the daimyo and dared not speak out, Scorpion shook his head and sneered. People are always angry, and the anger of ninjas is like thunder compared to that of ordinary people. The system of the ninja world is based on balanced regulations. Do you think that the high-level officials of the ninja village will willingly let their wallets be controlled by the daimyo and nobles who are ordinary people? It's just that no one has set such a precedent before, but now, hasn't Uchiha started doing it? However, this kind of thing is still too boring. Success and failure are just a ripple in the long river of time. Only eternal things can be called art, unlike others. Scorpion, who looks at problems from the perspective of art, nothingness, and time, is more like a bystander outside of the world. Because of this, he sees these things more clearly. However, he has no interest in changing this system. Hearing Shisui call his name, Uchiha was startled, a moment before realizing it wasn't him, but Uchiha. The one who truly attacked the daimyo was hidden, who, through his influence, had affected others. The ninja, victims of the war, launched an angry counterattack, firing the first shot that would transform the world and rewrite the ninja system. Thinking of this, Uchiha couldn't help but scratch his head. At first, he'd clearly just been trying to get a bailout, not trying to save the Uchiha or change the world. But now, what was going on? Look, Shisui said, turning his head to glance toward the official road outside the city, grinning wickedly. The one who truly wants the daimyo of Lightning Country has arrived. Hearing this, Miyashiro, who had been standing silently nearby, holding his daughter, shuddered. He'd thought Shisui had seen through his true intentions. Was this toy-making kid going to report him on the spot? But when he turned, he saw it, a three-person team slowly approaching from the official road in the distance. The leader, an elderly woman, wore a loose black robe, a white scarf tied around her chest, and carried a yellow wavy bag. Her lavender hair fell to her shoulders, her face wrinkled. Flanking her were a young woman with birchen green hair, wearing a halter top, and a young man with a goatee and a headscarf. Uchiha was taken aback for a moment, then immediately recognized him. The leader was none other than Chiyo, the elder of the Sand Village, with whom he held a deep grudge. As for the two beside her, one was the scorch-released ninja Yakira, who, thanks to him, had avoided being betrayed by the Raza Alliance's leaders during the Third Shinobi World War. The other, a jounin named Yura, appeared to be a spy planted within the Sand Village by Sasui's subconscious manipulation of the sand. Then, the long-awaited city gate swung open. A messenger dressed in Kumagakure attire emerged, shouting, "Welcome the envoys from the Sand Village and the Iwagakure village. Only envoys may enter. All others, please wait for the gate to reopen." Upon hearing this, Uchiha tilted his head to look behind the three-man Sand Village squad. He saw two more Iwagakure ninjas approaching quickly, following the Sand Village squad. The leader was a burly figure with a round face, wearing the red Iwagakure uniform, a brown vest, and a headband. Beside him was a bearded man with red hair, a brown vest, and a purple monk's uniform. Uchiha recognized both men. One was the son of the third Hokage, Inoki. He was a formidable figure capable of sending a tailed beast flying and transforming it into a golden horn with a single punch, and his earth-style, mountain earth technique could suppress both the outer path demon statue and the 10 tails. Yellow Earth. The other was the 4 tails Jinchuriki of the Hidden Rock Village, a powerful ninja who could fuse the power of the tailed beasts to create his own Keki Genkai, lava release. No. These guys are nearly killing the Hokage, and you're saying they're here to kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. So, to assassinate a daimyo, you have to queue up, right? Uchiha turned his head and looked at Sasori with a shocked expression. Let's go, Yanzu, this troublesome old woman is here too. Scorpion frowned, turned around immediately, gave Uchiha a look, and motioned for Uchiha and him to follow him. The last time I came to Yunming City, I had a place to stay in the city. Come with me there first. Being called Yanzu made Uchiha feel comfortable, but soon, he found the key point in Scorpion's words. Wait, you have been here before, then why don't you know the way? Scorpion naturally couldn't say that he had caught someone to lead the way last time. He had never walked such a long way before, and he had been improving the Filiuhu along the way, trying to build a transportation puppet. At this moment, he was embarrassed and angry, and immediately glared at Uchiha. Shut up. Yui Changyan happily followed with his daughter in his arms, and glanced at Scorpion with the same strange look. Tisk, nowadays ninjas, they come here once and don't even know the way. Hey, it seems that he is still not out of touch with this era. At least, he can remember the road he has walked once. You shut up too, old fogey. Chapter 281 The Chilling Truth, Anti-Skeleton Cannon. The locked gates of Yunming City could stop ordinary people, but not ninjas. The outer walls of this vast city, in particular, were more symbolic than practical. Following Scorpion, the three of them hurried through the crowded crowd in front of the city gate. After a short distance, they reached a low, undefended section of the wall. With chakra infused into their feet, they charged vertically up the wall and then leaped down. Beyond the outer wall lay a residential area. The three people turned into black shadows and quickly disappeared in the dense buildings under the city wall. At this moment, Chiyo, who was being greeted by the Union envoy and walking into the city gate, suddenly felt something strange. Who is looking at me just now? This look is so familiar. On the side, Yukang turned his head and looked at Chiyo, who had stopped, and couldn't help asking, Grandma Chiyo, what's wrong? Nothing. Chiyo shook her head, then raised her head and looked at the huge city in front of her, her eyes crossing the bustling bazaar at the entrance, passing the rows of buildings around the mountain, and looking at the flattest area and the tallest palace in the city. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Yura, one of the three, stepped forward to negotiate with the envoy, she narrowed her eyes and slowly said, Yukang, although I haven't told you the purpose of this trip along the way, I think that you, who have the will and responsibility of the shadow, should have your own answer. What do you think we need to do most now? Yukang was silent for a moment, and said unwillingly, Granny Chiyo, he's already the fourth Kazakage. All I can do is do my best to protect this village. Rosa, Chiyo's eyes turned cold at this remark. The defection of her grandson, Shisui, and the death of her brother, Ebizo, were the final straw that broke the camel's back for this lonely old woman. As she delved deeper into the war, she gradually uncovered truths that chilled her to the core. It's true that Uchiha and Namake's Minato were Ebizo's murderers, but that was due to war. Death on the battlefield due to inferior skill is not uncommon. She offered a bounty on Uchiha, ultimately forcing him to jump off a cliff near death and disappear, thus ending their feud. However, based on Raza's secret route and timing that day, he had clearly arrived at the battlefield, giving him ample time to rush to Ebizo's aid. Yet, he alone returned to the village, carrying Ebizo's body. And if it was really Luoshak, who deliberately chose not to help, Chiyo's eyes turned cold, she took a deep breath, and then smiled kindly at Yukang as if nothing had happened. It's okay, just think of it as a heart-to-heart talk with me. The future of the village will always belong to you young people. Hearing this, Yukang's eyes suddenly brightened slightly. In order to become the Kazakage, Luoshat had to turn herself into a mule, putting out fires everywhere. It's like this, is there still a chance for her? Thinking of this, Yukang's breathing became heavier. He fixed his eyes and began to analyze. The Sand Village is fighting against Konoha alone. Moreover, it has lost the support of the daimyo. Even with Luosha's gold sand to support its finances, it will not last long. In the current situation, the only way for the Sand Village to win this war is to unite the forces of the Wind, Lightning and Earth Kingdoms and attack the Fire Kingdom together, and now. What we have to do is to promote the offensive and defensive alliance of the Wind, Lightning and Earth Kingdoms. For this, Yukang's eyes also fell on the magnificent castle tower in the distance. We can't sit and wait for the opportunity to be missed. We should use thundering means to bring the disaster to Konoha and force the Cloud Village to take action against Konoha. Chiyo looked at Yukang, smiled, then raised his head and squinted at the thick clouds above Yunming City. Indeed, and this opportunity is coming. Tonight, dark and windy, a night for murder, a crack appeared in the thick cloud-covered sky. Sunlight filtered through the crack and fell on the door of an antique three-story tea house, illuminating the sign that read, Crow's Tea. Shisui pushed open the long unmaintained door, stirring up a cloud of dust. Come in. The hidden cloud village lay behind the capital of the Land of Lightning, and reaching the hidden cloud village required passing through the capital of the land of lightning. This safe house was also the shop Shisui had taken over when tracking the Konoha ninja, led by Orochimaru. The second-floor general store across from the shop was the secret Konoha hidden grounds, where Orochimaru had stayed for a while. The three followed Shisui into the tea house, ascending to the second floor. They watched as Shisui pulled back a partition, revealing a gap leading to the third floor. Upon entering the third floor, Uchiha Chi's gaze was fixed on him. The hidden room on the third floor wasn't large, but it was filled with a wide variety of tools, wood, bamboo, hammers, swords, and a wall full of ninja tools. And hanging on another wall were a collection of objects of a completely different style. From ancient three-barreled guns and bird guns to more sophisticated hand cannons and revolvers, Uchiha Chi even spotted a familiar-looking three-barreled cannon. Some resembled scaled-down models of the hidden cloud village's chakra cannons, but without the mounts. Instead, they looked like rocket launchers, designed to be carried on the shoulder and fired with a shout of RPG. Looking at this room full of equipment, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but gasp. He hadn't expected Scorpion, with his thick eyebrows and big eyes, to be such a wealthy man. While he wasn't paying attention, Uchiha Chi quietly approached, picked up a bird gun, and began to demonstrate it. It would be nice to satisfy his craving for a little fun. The second floor is habitable. The third floor is free, so don't bother me. Also, Scorpion hadn't finished his words when Miyashiro glanced around at the pile of toys, shook his head, and rubbed his chin, assessing, I'm going to live somewhere else. I saw some interesting people along the way. Then, Miyashiro glanced at Uchiha Chi, who couldn't move at the sight of the gun, and curled his lips. Unsure what was so interesting about these toys, he simply said, I'll come find you later. Don't forget what you promised me. With that, he turned and left, his daughter in his arms. Uchiha Chi wasn't worried about him. After all, he was a leading black marketer in the ninja world in its later years. While he knew nothing about the current ninja world, few in the world could overthrow him. Now, Miyashiro was clearly unwilling to be controlled by outsiders and wanted to gather intelligence through his own means. Scorpion didn't stop Miyashiro from leaving. Instead, he looked at Uchiha Chi with interest. You really like these things, then why not stay and experiment with me? I can decide. I'll give you all these inferior products. He took 2 steps closer and lifted his hand to remove the thick, three-barreled cannon from the wall shelf. He heaved it over his shoulder and pointed it directly at Uchiha Chi. This cannon had no name before, but now Scorpion decided to name it the anti-skeleton cannon. Since the chakra core power of a hand cannon couldn't penetrate the skeleton of the brat before him, what would this heavy weapon, which combined a large number of chakra cores and replicated the Kumagakure chakra cannon, and would be destroyed after just one shot, do? Facing Scorpion's expectant gaze, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but twitch his lips slightly. Then, he shook his head decisively like a rattle. No. Absolutely not. I'm leaving too. Ninja intelligence must never be revealed to anyone who is not trusted. The relationship between the two was not that good, and Uchiha Chi would not forget that this birdman wanted to kill him. Really? Scorpion shook his head with some regret, and looked at Uchiha Chi's leaving back with a gloomy look. Humph! Scorpion snorted coldly, raised his finger, pulled out a scroll, wrote something on it, and then stuffed it into a small puppet. Yura, the turbaned Sands Village senior ninja in the Sands Village team, was a spy planted inside Sand Village by him using his subconscious to manipulate the sand. It's just right, while I'm getting the intelligence, let Yura investigate the identity of this Uchiha Fugaku. Chapter 282 Chakra Distortion, the Special Effects of the Ten Tails Body. Leaving Scorpion's residence, I stepped onto the exotic streets. A sea of clouds drifted, the sky lofty. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the clouds, passing overhead, the bowl-shaped, semicircular buildings, flickering on the rammed yellow earth. The streets were bustling with people, their distinctive Kumagakure-style shops lined the roadsides. Merchants drove by one after another, their voices resembling a sea of hustle and bustle. Unlike Konoha, with its oriental architecture, which combined grandeur and elegance, this city was more about grandeur, a grandeur that lifted one's heart. And most importantly, the curb was truly wide. Putting on his conical hat, he placed the revolver he'd secretly taken from Scorpion on his waistband, placing it next to the previously seized gun. Uchiha Chi couldn't help but smile. A man must have a gun. Now, with 2 guns in hand, walking down the vast streets of this foreign land, Uchiha suddenly felt like a cowboy bebop. His chest inexplicably lifted 2 degrees. It also gave him a sense of security. From the moment he was found by Mishiro and until now, Uchiha hadn't had a full meal. A ninja's chakra is a combination of spiritual and physical strength. So, even though he had gained many powerful skills from the last battle, and his body had evolved along with it, without chakra, or more precisely, from constantly gnawing on tree bark to satisfy his hunger, he couldn't generate the chakra needed to study the changes taking place within him. And now, boss, bring me 10 cows. Entering a newly opened restaurant on the street that looked like a dine-in restaurant, Uchiha slammed the table and shouted as he sat down. Sorry, we only have grilled fish. A handsome young man with purple hair and a beauty mark on the left side of his chin soon approached, his face expressionless. Hearing the somewhat charming voice, Uchiha raised his head slightly and glanced at the young man before him. He felt strangely familiar, but Uchiha, nearly fainting from hunger, didn't think much of it. Then grilled fish. 10 plates, please, huh? Why does this guy's voice sound familiar? Hearing Uchiha's voice, the young man raised an eyebrow and nodded. Okay, sit down for a moment. Before long, plates of tempting grilled fish were served. Taking a bite with chopsticks, Uchiha was immediately surprised. The fish tasted quite good. The cut, the ingredients, the sear of the skin, and even the presentation were all impeccable. Even Uchiha, with his palate accustomed to all sorts of modern cuisine, couldn't find fault with it. And there was a faint smell of Konoha. It sounds strange to say this, but Uchiha inexplicably experienced such a vision. However, his surprise lasted only a moment, as his thoughts were quickly drawn to the changes occurring within his body. Ever since losing the 0 tails and evolving his talent into the incomplete 10 tails, his body felt like a gaping hole, desperately needing replenishment. Every cell in his body was constantly sending out hunger signals. And when this need was met, Uchiha immediately sensed an endless stream of mystical power gradually spreading from his stomach to every corner of his body. It was a strange phenomenon called life force. And this was only the first level of change. As his entire body was enveloped by this warming sensation, a power hidden deep within his bloodstream and cells began to spread through his limbs and bones. And, tracing back to its source, he continued to trace it back, pursuing, exploring, twisting, and transforming towards ever more dangerous directions, towards ever more extreme powers. At this moment, Uchiha, as if sensing something, immediately drew forth a new stream of chakra from within his body. The color of the newly generated chakra was completely different from normal chakra. It was a blend of blue, black, and red. Furthermore, following Uchiha's will, the color of this chakra gradually shifted, from blue to deep blue that flared and pulsed like flames. From this deep blue, it transformed into a jet black color, as if gushing from the deep sea. From this jet black, it finally transformed into violent, pulsating crimson. Soon, a subtitle popped up before his eyes, under the influence of talent, incomplete 10 tails body, S3/10, you have gained the chakra properties of the 2-tailed Matatabi, the 8-tailed Jayuki, and the 9-tailed Kirama, 2-tailed Matatabi. Property, Rat Jade Flame, which elevates your fire attribute chakra to the extremes of fire release, within the realm of flame release, and allows you to more expertly control the powerful flames. 8-tailed Jayuki. Property, Octopus Seal, which transforms your chakra into the regenerative squid ink chakra of sealing techniques, effectively increasing the strength of these techniques. 9-tailed Kirama. Ability, Thoughts of Hatred. Your chakra imbues itself with a 9-tailed fox's violent nature. Its presence can inspire the deepest evil in people, strengthen your body, and grant you superhuman strength. Your chakra limit has been increased. Boom. The chopsticks in Uchiha's hand suddenly ignited in a layer of blue flames, vanishing in his grasp. Immediately, the blue flames exploded, soaring straight up from his palm. Transforming into a ball of fire that shot straight up, instantly breaking free from its restraints, lifting Uchiha's head and threatening to explode before his eyes. Uchiha's pupils shrank slightly, and he was about to gather the power within him, but as soon as he moved his buttocks, there was a crack. The bench he was sitting on collapsed, taking it with him, and with it the soles of his feet. Uchiha sensed that he had only lightly stepped on the ground, but his entire body sank downwards, his feet crushing the ground and embedding themselves deeply into the earth. What the hell? Uchiha was completely bewildered, staring at the cracks in the spiderweb he'd kicked off, spreading beneath his feet. and the deep blue ball of fire in midair, threatening to explode, reducing the small shop and several surrounding stores to ash. But then, "What are you doing, Uchiha Chi?" A sudden cry of surprise rang out. It was the handsome young man carrying the grilled fish, about to serve Uchiha Chi. More precisely, it was Hokage Kakashi. He quickly glanced at the scene, and without hesitation, he dropped the plate in his hand. He darted forward, past Uchiha Chi, and raised his hand to pull down the shop door. As he turned his back, his hands were already rapidly forming seals. Yin CZC Yin. Water style, water array wall. Kakashi immediately squatted down and slapped his hands to the ground, pressing his chakra into the ground. From beneath the surface, a fierce stream of water shot up, charging directly at the deep blue fireball that threatened to explode in midair, attempting to extinguish it. Oh no, seeing this, Uchiha Chi immediately realized that ordinary water style could not counter this fire style. If the young man who had called out his name did so, it would only add fuel to the fire, completely detonating the unstable fire rat ball. It's over. It's going to explode. Uchiha Chi's scalp tingled slightly, and he decisively raised his hand to pull away the black cloth covering his eyes. However, at this moment, seeing the fierce water stream from water style, water array while only making the fireball in midair even more unstable, Kakashi's eyes fixed. He immediately grabbed Uchiha Chi's arm, kicked open a hidden trap in the ground not far away, and leaped down with Uchiha Chi into the hole revealed. Chapter 283. The curtain opens, Yunming City explodes in succession. For most people living in the metropolis of Yunming City, no one cares whether you're well-fed or warm. When passing each other, all they can do is exchange a glance before returning to their own lives. Unless, that is, your toilet explodes. Boom! A sudden roar echoed from the quiet street, as if toilet number 1, blocked for 30 years, had finally exploded. The crowds on the street cast their gazes in awe. The grilled fish shop, which had just been converted from a grocery store to a restaurant the day before, and had once become a popular specialty in the Land of Thunder thanks to its exquisite grilled fish technique, had exploded. And it was a remarkably clean collapse. From roof to beams to foundation, everything crumbled in an instant, a truly heart-wrenching sight. Blue flames burned slowly across the ruins, and the intense heat could be felt from 100 steps away. Hiss, what's going on? That's a ninja technique, right? I'm afraid the guy at the grilled fish shop has provoked a ninja. Who says not? I did see someone wearing a conical hat walk in just now. Residents on the street stared at the exploding grilled fish shop with great interest, their conversations filled with a certain gloating. Meanwhile, in the shadows, a team of ninjas wearing Kumagakure forward protectors, stalking the shop, exchanged bewildered glances. Following Orochimaru's plan to collapse Kumagakure, enraged by the Third Hokage's thorough investigation, they had just tracked Orochimaru's trail to this Konoha stronghold hidden in the capital of the Land of Lightning. But, before they could even begin to monitor it, how could it have exploded on its own? Did you see the short man who just walked in? Go investigate. The captain of the Kumagakure Shunin, who led the team and had previously appeared outside the Hell Valley to perform the important task of perception, frowned with a green mark number 1 on his nose, looked up and down at the ruins in front of him, and gave orders to his subordinates. Soon, one of his men reported their findings. That man came out of the tea house across the street. This tea house isn't open to the public and hasn't been open for a long time. But according to the people of the Land of Thunder who live nearby, 3 people suddenly arrived this morning after the envoys from various countries entered the city. Matoi tilted his head, his gaze landing on the sign for the tea house called Crow's Tea, recalling the 3 distinct yet terrifyingly powerful chakra fluctuations he had sensed at the grilled fish restaurant. He narrowed his eyes. 3 people? Besides those undead demons, have other unknown forces infiltrated Yunming City? Keep your eyes on that tea house. Don't approach. I have a bad feeling. Give me a moment. Matoi took a deep breath, bit his finger, and formed a summoning seal with both hands, pressing them to the ground. Bang! As smoke billowed, a tawny owl appeared at his feet. This is the summoning jutsu, Brown Bird. As a sensory ninja, limited to supporting from the sidelines of the battlefield, Matoi was entrusted with this important task. Besides his exceptional sensory ninjutsu, the Brown Bird, a summoned beast capable of silent flight at high speed and rapid transmission of information, was also a significant asset. Patting the bird's back, Matoi spoke solemnly, "Ashiman, please inform AI and Killer Bee in the city of this news as soon as possible." Tell them to bring reinforcements and apprehend these 3 unidentified individuals who have infiltrated the city." Elsewhere, beneath the ruins, the 2 men, who had inadvertently entered the side of the Kumagakure ninja and, by coincidence, had escaped the impending danger, now stared at each other in bewilderment. "Are you Kakashi?" After the purple-haired, beauty-marked young man removed his hood, revealing his signature white fur, and donned a black mask in Konoha for a protector, Uchiha stared at him in astonishment. "Isn't this Hokage Kakashi?" No wonder he felt so familiar. The disguise he'd been wearing was clearly the same outfit the future guy wore when he was flirting with reporters and tricking children. The only difference was that the future Kadano was an adult, while the current one was still a child. Plus, there was no scar on his eye yet, so there was no need to hide it with grease paint. That's why Uchiha couldn't tell the difference. "You idiot!" Kakashi stared at Uchiha with a look of helplessness. Although finding Konoha's contact point as soon as you regained consciousness was the right thing to do for the mission, it was so reckless to rush over here. Kakashi sighed suddenly. "Don't you know that Kumagakure has your sights on me? I don't know how you did your ninja training. You're just like a Biro, such an idiot." Hearing this, Uchiha felt a little embarrassed. "My brother, ninja training is taught within the clan, but the key is that the clan doesn't teach this." But then again, he was really just starving and wanted to eat. Otherwise, contacting Konoha would have taken precedence over contacting the clan. But who knew that this meal would end up in Konoha's stronghold? On closer inspection, it actually makes sense. If Kakashi was Konoha's spy in Yunming City, then it wouldn't be surprising that he would open a grilled fish restaurant. Unlike Naruto, who would later rely on the village's financial support, Kakashi's father, White Fang, didn't become a beloved hero like Naruto's father, Minato Namake's. Instead, he suffered humiliation. Few relatives or friends visited Kakashi's home, and no one knew where his mother had disappeared. Children of the poor had to grow up early, and before becoming a ninja, Kakashi often relied on fishing to make a living. As a result, Kakashi honed his skill in grilling fish from a young age. Hiding his identity, gathering intelligence, and using this skill to break the deadlock was a good option for Kakashi, who had never performed such a mission before. Meanwhile, Kakashi was leaning against the edge of the cellar, his ear pressed against the rock face, listening for a moment. He breathed a sigh of relief when he heard no more footsteps. "Thankfully, the technique you just used was different from your previous chakra fluctuations, and it didn't allow the Kumagakure outside to sense your chakra. Otherwise, the mission would be in trouble." "Mission?" Uchiha was stunned at this, a bit bewildered. "What mission?" Kakashi was also taken aback by this answer, then remembered that Uchiha had previously fallen off a cliff and disappeared. Naturally, he wouldn't be as aware of Konoha's plans and subsequent arrangements as he was. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look up at Uchiha's face. When his gaze fell on his closed eyes, he remembered the series of severe injuries Uchiha had suffered as mentioned in the intelligence. And he couldn't help but be silent again. Yes, he managed to survive the fall, and even find Konoha's contact point as quickly as possible despite his crippled body. He's done a great job, Kakashi couldn't help but think so, his gaze towards Uchiha softening instantly. "I'll explain this to you later," Kakashi said gravely. "Come with me first. There's another exit. Let's get out of here first." With that, he grabbed Uchiha's arm and began to lead him towards the other exit of the dark cellar. Seeing Kakashi's suddenly softened gaze, Uchiha felt a wave of discomfort, goosebumps breaking out on his arms. Damn it, why was this white-haired brat looking at him with such disgusting eyes? Uchiha quickly let go of his hand, waving it away. "My eyesight's fine. Lead the way." Hearing this, Kakashi glanced sideways, a shrewd thought to himself, even in this state, they're still trying to hold on. This guy, a Brito too. These Uchihas are really stubborn. Thinking of this, he gave up insisting and simply led the way while explaining, "My mission this time is to come to Yunming City with Minato-sensei to gather intelligence here. The most important thing is to find out the daimyo of the Land of Lightning's attitude." By this point, Kakashi had reached the other end of the small cellar and opened a secret compartment, revealing a passageway beyond. A faint light shone through, and after walking a little further along the passage, he could see the exit was in an alleyway 2 streets away from the grilled fish restaurant. The two emerged one after the other. Kakashi couldn't help but turn back and reach out, wanting to pull Uchiha back. He then spoke, "And Konoha's plan this time, The Sandame's arrangements for this incident is for us to secretly protect the daimyo of the Land of Lightning and ensure the five-nation talks proceed as scheduled. However, just as Kakashi finished speaking, wait, Uchiha Chi, who had just emerged from the passage and was now standing in the alley, was suddenly startled. He shuddered, and an inexplicable premonition of danger arose. He immediately turned and looked towards the street where the grilled fish restaurant had been located. In that direction, a beam of light, a fusion of 5 types of chakra, suddenly shone brightly, painting everything around it a pale, streaky white. Boom, a small mushroom cloud rose with a roar. The sonic waves instantly spread like ripples, smashing a large area of surrounding buildings into dust and causing them to collapse with a loud bang. Uchiha Chi quickly grabbed Kakashi and tucked him under his arm. He dodged a falling roof with a roll, then leaped past several massive, falling stone pillars. When the dust cleared, he looked up again and saw figures in Kumagakure uniforms, soaring high into the sky. Chasing a red-haired figure in a black robe, they headed out of the city. The red-haired figure was Shisui, who had recently departed. And chasing Shisui, a chakra aura familiar to Uchiha Chi was present. Was that Killer Bee? But before Uchiha Chi could react, what had happened in that brief moment? Elsewhere, in the heart of the city, on the flattest stretch of land, the tallest, most luxurious, and most majestic palace, home to the most distinguished of the Land of Lightning, the daimyo's palace, the place known as the Castle Tower, suddenly, a violent crimson light blazed. Like underground magma erupting, rising high. The terrifying chakra condensed within it ignited in the next moment. Roaring. Soaring to the heavens. It dyed the entire sky a blood red. Then, rapidly spreading from the city center to the edges, a series of voices, like a relay, echoed throughout the city. The daimyo has been assassinated. Citywide martial law. 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 If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284. The road ahead is difficult, Konoha's strange actions. Standing amidst the ruins, watching everything crumble around him, the dome, the bricks, the beams, and the innocent civilians of the Land of Lightning suffering beneath, unable to rise, their mouths gaping and their faces etched with pain, like a group of dehydrated fish. Listening to the chaotic cries, the agonizing wails, and the terrifying reports that spread rapidly throughout the city, Uchiha Chi's heart sank. How fast things happen. The daimyo, how could he be assassinated again? If memory serves, this must be the 3rd time the Birdman has been assassinated. Uchiha Chi's first reaction upon hearing the news was to look up at the magnificent palace in the city center. After a moment's reflection, he finally understood what had happened. The first explosion was caused by an accident. His ability to gain the Two Tails chakra led him to lose control, causing the fire rat ball to explode. Combined with Kakashi's subsequent claims that he had been targeted by Kumagakure, Kumagakure likely traced Sasori's whereabouts during their investigation and dispatched personnel to investigate. Sasori happened to possess a secret chakra cannon, a weapon that was kept secret from the public. The encounter between the two was a bitter rivalry. Sasori likely used the same cannon he intended to use against his Susanoo skeleton, leading to the second explosion. The third explosion, unsurprisingly, was due to information he had heard earlier. Members of the undead cult, captured by Kumagakure and destined for public execution, had been rescued. Their rescuers, perhaps hoping to infiltrate other ninja villages within the city, didn't even wait for nightfall and attacked the daimyo of the Land of Lightning in broad daylight. Thinking of this, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but frown. He had arrived in this city a little late, and he was completely confused about the current situation in the city. He had no way of judging whether Fiden was among those who were kidnapped in the morning, and his little brother might be tied up and used as a shield to charge towards the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Thinking of this, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. He turned to look at Kakashi. Kakashi, since you're here with Minato, you must be one of the envoys participating in the Five Nations talks. Reveal your identity, and Kumagakure won't do anything to you. Stay here and see if you can help rescue some people. I'm going to check over there now. As he spoke, Uchiha turned his head and looked towards the castle tower in the center of Kumagakure. However, Kakashi, who had just recovered from the chaos, grabbed Uchiha's arm and said solemnly, "No, wait. You can't go there now, you can't reveal your identity, and you can't let the Land of Lightning or the Kumagakure know that you're still alive, you're already dead." Hearing this, Uchiha was a little confused. "What do you mean he's dead? My brother is alive and kicking, able to finish 10 bowls of rice in one meal. Can't you see it right in front of you, Kakashi? Konoha needs you to die. At least, you can't leave before the 5 nations talks begin and all matters are settled." Also, Kakashi looked at Uchiha with a heavy face. "Do you understand? Now, the entire ninja world has its eyes on you. The information about the battle in Hell Valley has been secretly leaked. Everyone knows that you may not be dead. Your eyes were gouged out, you lost your tailed beast. And you lost your bloodline limit. Now you can only be regarded as a disabled genin at best. However, someone like you has a bounty that attracts countless ninjas. But outside Konoha, you have information about the 10th tailed beast in the ninja world, Zero Tail, and can even fuse it without the help of any sealing technique. Why do you think Minato-sensei set the 8 diagrams seal for you? Everyone wants to torture you to find out the whereabouts of Zero Tail. And get the method to control that terrifying power. Furthermore, compared to the Uchiha active outside in Yunming City, your head is what truly impresses the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, and even the Third Hokage. They need your life to wash away the shame of this crushing defeat for the Hidden Cloud Village, and they will use your life as a sacrifice, to sound the clarion call for the Hidden Cloud Village to mobilize its forces and embark on the Third Shinobi World War. In Hokage Kakashi's eyes, Uchiha's actions were sheer folly. A Kekkei ninja had lost his Kekkei limit, a tailed beast Jinchuriki had lost his tailed beast. What would remain of him? For Uchiha to leave now, to appear before the eyes of the 5 great nations, would be courting his own demise. Konoha's plans would be affected by him, and the mission itself would suffer setbacks. For Kakashi, whose creed was completing the mission above all else, this was utterly unacceptable. For the sake of the mission, I can't have you in front of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Sorry, Uchiha. With that, Kakashi whipped out his white-fanged dagger from his back, took 2 steps forward, turned, and with a cold expression, stood before Uchiha. However, at Kakashi's action, Uchiha raised an eyebrow slightly. He ignored the rest of the conversation, focusing on just one sentence. "Konoha needs me dead." Why did Konoha need him dead? To facilitate the final plan between the daimyo of the Land of Lightning and the Third Hokage, to direct the Kumagakure weapon of war against the very being Konoha desired. So who was this being? Which country? Which village? Or, thinking of this, he recalled the shocking battle that had taken place in the original story. Uchiha's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he had found the single, crucial, fundamental thread connecting everything from a tangled web. In the original story, during the Third Shinobi World War, a gruesome battle erupted between Iwagakure and Kumagakure. How had AI, the Third Hokage, the pinnacle of Kage power, been forced to single-handedly withstand the might of Iwagakure's vast army? Perhaps the answer lay in Konoha's current, bizarre actions. Knowing that the other ninja villages were urging Kumagakure to attack Konoha again, Kakashi, dispatched by Konoha, insisted on waiting a week until everything was settled. He stood by, waiting for the seemingly dire situation to unfold. It was as if Konoha was aiming Kumagakure's weapon of war at something other than Konoha itself. Thinking of this, Uchiha couldn't help but curl his lips and looked fixedly at the white-haired kid blocking his way. "Kakashi, with what you said, I have to live well. Besides, not only do I have to live well, I have reason to go, and companions I must save." Uchiha's eyes were fixed, and he spoke in a resolute tone. "For this, even if it means risking my life, I will do it at all costs." Chapter 285 The Determination to Move Forward. Minato Namikaze as a companion. "You're simply stubborn." Kakashi's face darkened upon hearing this. He'd already thoroughly analyzed the pros and cons, yet the man before him remained impassive and reckless. This reminded him of his father, who bore the infamy of his death. "Listen, Uchiha, a ninja must remain calm and judge carefully. A ninja who doesn't abide by rules and discipline is nothing more than a worthless person. If you still insist on this course of action." Kakashi gripped the hilt of his ninja sword with both hands, his face darkening, his eyes gleaming with anger. "I'll break your legs right here." Uchiha wasn't surprised by Kakashi's decision. At this time, Hokage Kakashi prioritized his mission above all else. Moreover, Uchiha Chi was saving a comrade from another village. Such an act was tantamount to defying Konoha's will, and it was natural for Kakashi to be baffled by it. Besides that old man, Uchiha Setsuna, who blindly supported him in everything, anyone in Konoha would probably think Uchiha Chi's actions were completely out of his mind. It was sheer treason. Uchiha Chi didn't bother to explain further. From the moment he decided to follow Miyashiro into this foreign capital, he had already prepared for the worst. Kill the daimyo, kill everyone who stood in his way. Whether from Kumagakure, Tsunagakure, Kirigakure, or Iwagakure, including now, this possibility of severing ties with his past. All for that kid who had bet everything on him, who had trusted him like a fanatic. After all he'd been through, after experiencing the pain of losing someone he cherished right before his eyes, Uchiha Chi could no longer rely on insurance fraud or fabricated excuses to deceive himself. He came here to fight. For revenge. To show everyone in this world what the consequences of provoking Uchiha Chi will be. And what a cruel, unforgettable revenge he will soon receive. Yes, when they first met Chihiko, one of the 3 Akatsuki in the Land of Rain, he had said something so true: conquer the world, make it feel pain, and the future you long for will arrive. What made Chihiko give up on this idea and compromise with weakness was simply that he wasn't strong enough. His punches weren't fast enough, and certainly not fierce enough. But Uchiha Chi was different. When his mind's eye awakened, he realized, as long as he continued to fight, with his gift of a strong heart, combined with his master of all martial arts, which allowed him to wield any ability with ease. By combining 1,000 abilities into one, he would reach the pinnacle of mastery. The world would eventually lie at his feet. All Uchiha Chi lacked was time to rush into one extreme battle after another. And time was precisely what Uchiha Chi, having traveled to this point in time, had in abundance. At that moment, watching Hokage Kakashi draw his sword before him, Uchiha Chi let out a breath, his expression darkening, his brow furrowed. Immediately, he prepared to open his eyes, harnessing the combined power of his Sharingan, his Blood Dragon Eye, and the natural energy provided by his own transformed eye vessels. Using the combined power of his eyes, combined with the new eye technique already well within his grasp, he would strike Kakashi down with utmost speed. However, at that moment, a gentle voice suddenly rang out from behind Kakashi. "You're wrong, Kakashi." A hand wearing a blue arm guard clapped Kakashi's shoulder. Then, a young man with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a gentle, handsome countenance appeared behind Kakashi. It was none other than Uchiha Chi's long-lost Namikaze Minato. In the ninja world, ninjas who break the rules and neglect their missions are called trash. But those who don't value their companions are worse than trash. Despite his gentle voice, Namikaze Minato's expression was serious. "Minato-sensei." Kakashi was startled and turned his head to look at Minato. Then, a trace of indignation quickly spread across his face, his fair complexion flushing red. He clenched his fists. How could it be? Even Minato-sensei thinks so, of course. Seeing Kakashi like this, Minato was speechless, unsure how to persuade him. But then, Uchiha Chi shook his head, his patience gone. He took a lightning-fast step forward and instantly appeared behind Kakashi. Using his Uchiha Ryu swordsmanship, he predicted Kakashi's reaction and raised his hand to stop Kakashi's counter-swinging White Fang's short sword. White Fang's swordsmanship was also within the realm of the Uchiha Ryu's swordsmanship. Then, a single hand strike struck Kakashi on the back of the neck. Bang! Kakashi fell into Minato's arms. Minato sighed, picked him up, and instantly vanished, placing him somewhere else. He reappeared moments later. "Sorry, Kakashi hasn't gotten over it yet." He scratched his head and gave Uchiha Chi a slightly awkward smile. He felt frustrated that his teacher's teachings to his students had no effect. "It's nothing." Uchiha Chi shook his head, his expression calm as he gazed at the young man who had appeared before him. Without experiencing a life-or-death decision, without Obito's sacrifice, it was far too imaginary to expect to change someone, especially a stubborn ninja, with just a few words. Ultimately, Kakashi's perspective on this matter would have to be changed by Uchiha Obito. Uchiha Chi wasn't his father, and he had no intention of interfering. Anyway, see, at that moment, Minato looked at Uchiha Chi, now healthy, and breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled, a heavy weight finally lifting from his chest. "Welcome back." However, facing Minato before him, Uchiha Chi couldn't muster a smile. "Minato, Let's talk about reminiscing later. He pointed toward the bustling city center and asked in a deep voice, "You're not trying to stop me from going there, are you?" Like Kakashi, compared to how easily Kakashi could be dealt with, Namake's Minato, with his mastery of the flying thunder god jutsu and Rasengan Rin, and his sharp combat reflexes that rivaled his own, found even Uchiha quite a challenge. No, however, Minato smiled slightly and explained, "I will go with you, don't worry, I won't stop you from doing anything, and as a companion, I will help you. It's just that there are some things that you need to witness with your own eyes before making your choice." Uchiha raised his eyebrows. "Even if I will kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning." Minato curled the corners of his mouth, smiled confidently, raised one palm, and held it in front of Uchiha. "Even if you will kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning." Uchiha then revealed a smile and raised his palm as well. Pa. The two palms collided, and the two smiled at each other. "Then, let's go and make a big fuss." Chapter 286. The castle tower collapses, Awakens takes action. Elsewhere, nestled in the heart of Yunming City, the capital of the Land of Lightning, lies a luxurious abode protected by towering inner city walls. The daimyo's palace in the Land of Lightning is home to what's known as the Tenshukaku. This structure is the tallest and largest building in a Japanese castle, its most important type, serving as a lookout and command post, and serving as a symbol of feudal power. The Tenshukaku, situated at the highest point within the castle, encompasses a main keep and 3 subsidiary keep towers. At this moment, a round-faced man, clad in the red uniform of the Iwagakure clan, a brown vest, and a red Iwagakure cloth forward guard, his figure as imposing as a giant bear, stood atop a section of the inner city wall littered with corpses, seemingly waiting for something. He stared indifferently at the crimson beam piercing the tower, its crumbling structure the highest in the castle tower. The white-gray walls and stone walls crumbled, the top watchtower crashing into the lower Nagura. Phoebe trees toppled, bricks and tiles snapped, wood chips flew, and a cloud of dust rose high in the air. For a long moment, as this building, so revered by the people of the Land of Thunder, collapsed, hurried footsteps echoed through the inner city. Before the samurai and guardian ninja guarding the daimyo's mansion could arrive, the beam that had pierced the castle tower, dyeing the sky blood red, gradually faded. Then, a man with short red hair and a full beard, wearing a burnt-to-tatters purple monk's uniform, revealing a sturdy, red chest, quietly emerged from the crumbling castle tower. With a single leap, he ascended the towering wall, too tall for ordinary men to reach, and stood beside the towering man. These two, surprisingly, were the 2 Iwagakure envoys who had arrived at Yunming City. Wang Tu, son of the 3rd Tsuchikage, and Lao Zi, the powerful ninja who served as the Four Tails Jinchuriki's instructor. After entering the city, they settled at the embassy and, after creating their own clones, they immediately arrived. Following their pre-planned plan, Lao Zi launched an attack, destroying the venerable structure in one fell swoop. Wang Tu then turned his head, looking at the dust-covered Lao Zi, and asked with a tense and serious expression, "How's it going? Is the daimyo of the Land of Lightning among them? Did you kill that guy?" Wang Tu appeared calm, but inwardly, he felt a sense of guilt. After all, what they were doing was a heinous act, one that would have resulted in seppuku at the very least. Lao Zi immediately shook his head, frowned and said, "The one in the castle tower is just a substitute. I'm afraid the real daimyo of the Land of Thunder is just as the intelligence we received before said." After the first assassination attempt by the undead evil failed, he moved to another place. Now, I'm afraid no one knows where he's hiding. At this point, Lao Zi couldn't help but sneered. Such a noble person, an existence that we could only bow our heads to in the past, is now being chased around like a stray dog. It's a pity that the old man is still so respectful to the one from the Land of Earth. It's simply boring. After easily killing the group of noble people in the castle tower, Lao Zi was a little dazed for a moment, feeling like he was dreaming, and even his tone became a little proud. "Be careful with your words." Wang Tu frowned, glanced at Lao Zi, and said in a deep voice, "Don't forget our real purpose. This trip is to push Tang Shinobi and various parties to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, to ignite this fire and put some pressure on him. We don't really want to kill him, after all, he is still of great use to us." Lao Zi was silent for a while, then raised his head and looked at the castle tower that was already in chaos, and asked, "Then what are you going to do next? What's the point of killing a fake? Can such an action really anger that guy? You'd better understand that these people, like this old man, who live in power, probably won't be moved even if their wives and sons die in front of them. Lao Zi stared at Wang Tu coldly, as if hinting at something. They are already another kind of creature. They are emotionless, cold-blooded power machines. Wang Tu shook his head, chuckled, and said confidently, I said, we just want to ignite this fire. Killing the fake daimyo will force the real daimyo to be exposed. If he doesn't show up and take charge of the situation, then he will lose face and his prestige will be greatly reduced. We can also take the initiative in the subsequent 5-nation summit. If he chooses to show up, then the subsequent assassinations will eventually make him make the right choice. After hearing these words, Lao Zi was too lazy to figure out the twists and turns hidden in these words. He just raised his head and looked at Wang Tu's honest face and sighed. Wang Tu, you are really living more and more like an old man now. This is not a good thing. Wang Tu's expression did not change, but there was a little depression in his eyes. At this moment, he was just like the Dark Lord of Konoha. Since he chose to do such a dirty thing for the village, he would have no chance of becoming the fourth such Hokage that he dreamed of. Someone has to do this kind of thing. His eyes dimmed for a moment, and soon, Wang Tu cheered up and looked at Lao Zi. Let's not talk about this anymore. How is the kid called Uchiha Chi who I asked you to keep an eye on? Catching this brat and bringing him back to Awakens is the most important thing on our trip. It doesn't matter even if all the previous things fail. The secret techniques of the evil god cult are of great importance. Whether we can seize the kingdom of thunder in a single battle depends entirely on him. Hearing this, Lao Zi took a deep breath and closed his eyes, as if he was very disgusted with such a thing. After a moment of silence, he said, I have already told that brat how to choose, and he did as you expected. He chose to agree, although everything is to kill the third Hokage. AI. But to Wang Tu, I will never do such a thing again. He stared at Wang Tu with a little struggle in his eyes, and then persuaded, you try to control love with hatred, which will only backfire. If the boundary between good and evil cannot be clearly drawn, it will only give rise to a greater chain of hatred. Hearing this, Wang Tu's eyes suddenly turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, but this is war. Use any means, at any cost, even the most despicable behavior, as long as it can bring victory, then it's worth it. After a while, seeing that Lao Zi just closed his eyes, as if he was very disgusted with being associated with him, Wang Tu smiled naively, hiding the depression in his eyes, and said with a chuckle, well, now it's our turn to take the stage. Calculating the time, we should rush here by now and become the hero who defeated the assassin. Chapter 287, Drawing the Sword and Looking Around in Confusion. Shimura Danzo is decisive. Iwagakure is the first to strike. At that moment, within the inner city of Yunming City, standing behind the towering walls, gazing at the chaotic ruins below, Uchiha Chi stared with a strange expression at Wang Tu, who stood before a group of daimyo officials, speaking freely. And behind him, Lao Zi, who stood with his eyes closed, looking annoyed. Nearby, Minato also looked surprised. I thought Tsunagakure would strike first. After all, right now, they should be the ones most eager to provoke a joint attack on Konoha by the three nations of wind, thunder, and earth. Uchiha Chi stared at the two shameless individuals below in amazement. After arriving late several times, Minato had developed the habit of always checking the Flying Thunder God coordinates. With the Flying Thunder God jutsu, he and Minato arrived at the scene at near light speed, save for a brief delay due to Kakashi. This speed was unmatched by the other ninja villages. However, upon arriving at the scene, they discovered that the Iwagakure men had outrun them. Almost as soon as the noise started, the two men had already reached the bombed-out castle tower and claimed to the daimyo officials that they had driven off the assassins. While this might have fooled ordinary people, unfamiliar with ninja speed, Uchiha Chi and Namikaze Minato immediately recognized that the duo from Iwagakure, who had claimed to be guardians, were the cause of the commotion. Staring at the two men below, Uchiha Chi pondered for a moment, then, considering the intelligence he had gathered, gasped. The original story depicts the Third Shinobi World War, a stunning one-on-one battle. This battle ended with the Third Hokage fighting the Iwagakure army for 3 days and 3 nights, ultimately succumbing to exhaustion. At that time, the Third Hokage had entered the battlefield to buy time for the Kumagakure on the front lines to retreat. So, under what circumstances would Kumagakure need to retreat? It could only be that this war was originally initiated by Kumagakure. When Iwagakure and Sandagakure joined forces to invade the Land of Fire and confront Konoha in the Land of Rain and the Land of Grass, Kumagakure attempted to invade Konoha several times in the Land of Rice, but were stopped by Minato Namikaze and failed to achieve any results. They then chose the risky tactic of forcing a sea crossing and attempting a surprise attack on Iwagakure. Unexpectedly, this reckless man, after finally using his brain, fell into the treacherous scheme of the third Hokage, Inoki, and the situation reached a point where Kumagakure had no way out. In such a critical situation, to protect the Kumagakure's retreat, the third Hokage was forced to risk his life using the Tensou Jutsu, a technique that could only teleport objects, to reach the front lines, single-handedly resisting the Iwagakure army of 10,000, buying time for the Kumagakure's retreat. In other words, Iwagakure had long been wary of Kumagakure, and Kumagakure had long harbored ambitions to invade Iwagakure. Now, the two Iwagakure members are deliberately currying favor with the Land of Lightning. Perhaps they've already been plotting to undermine Kumagakure. Considering the current situation, Kumagakure's advance into the Land of Rice has stalled due to Orochimaru's plan to collapse Kumagakure. If they still want to attack Konoha, they have only two options. First, bypass the Land of Rice, use the Iron Land as a transit point, and then invade Konoha. However, the Iron Land is a neutral nation, never participating in wars between ninja nations. Kumagakure's request for a passage through the Land of Iron would be met with a rebuff. If they force the passage, the Iron Land warriors, while inferior, are no pushovers. This is a tough nut to crack. Second, use the Land of Earth and, with Iwagakure's help, jointly invade Konoha from the grassland. This option is likely what both Kumagakure and Iwagakure desire. Kumagakure could use this opportunity to launch a surprise attack on Iwagakure as planned, while Iwagakure might also want to seize this opportunity to annihilate Kumagakure's forces in the Land of Earth. With this, Uchiha Chi had a good grasp of the intentions of the five factions focused on the capital of the Land of Lightning. Konoha's inaction stemmed from Orochimaru's plan to collapse Kumagakure, having learned from Kumagakure of their planned surprise attack on Iwagakure. Both Iwagakure and Kumagakure were scheming against each other. Kirigakure hadn't seen the incoming forces yet, but they were currently engaged in internal strife under the control of Uchiha Madara, and likely had no time to participate in such an incident. Only Tsunagakure was honest. They likely genuinely wanted to eliminate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, pin the blame on Konoha, and foster a trilateral alliance between Wind, Thunder, and Earth to win the Third Shinobi World War. See, now you should understand, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning is clearly not here. If you proceed now, you'll only alert the enemy. Minato turned his head and calmly analyzed Uchiha Chi. The child you're looking for, hidden, isn't here. The revenge you seek, the third Hokage, isn't here either, of course, he said calmly, his gaze lowered. If you want to act now, eliminate those innocent Land of Lightning officials first, then capture those two Iwagakure ninjas and torture them for the whereabouts of the child from the Land of Hot Water. I'll help you. Hearing Minato's words, Uchiha Chi fell silent. He had expected a grand spectacle, with members of all five nations assembling to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, and that he would strike first, attacking with the might of a Gundam. He could single-handedly challenge them all, not kill them all, but at least cripple half of them, force them to hand over Hidden, and then help Hidden kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. He could then wait here for the third Hokage to arrive, and then kill him and complete his revenge in one fell swoop. Even if this battle blinded him and made him a traitor spurned by all nations, he wouldn't hesitate. But after watching for so long, this turned out to be just a farce. The people from the other villages must also be hiding in the shadows, keeping their heads down and not coming out at all. And if he took action now, even if he caught these two, he probably wouldn't be able to get any results from interrogating them. As Minato said, it would only alert the enemy. I understand what you mean. Uchiha Chi let out more breath and scratched his head, feeling a surge of irritation. But where am I supposed to find Hidden? Damn it. This is so annoying. He angrily smashed the gray-white stone bricks of the city wall with a punch. Uchiha Chi felt a little lost for a moment. Yunming City was so huge, with hundreds of thousands of people living there. Even searching for the hiding places of ninjas from other villages, beating them up one by one and forcing them to reveal information, would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. He now had the Gundam, but he lacked the most crucial target. He was practically drawing his sword and looking around, feeling lost. Minato looked at Uchiha Chi's expression, patted his shoulder, a smile in his eyes. It's okay, there's still a chance. You should have learned from Kakashi what attitude Konoha has taken towards the current situation. Hearing this, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but look up and looked at Minato in surprise. Didn't Konoha choose to sit back and wait and see? What does this have to do with it? Minato's face froze, and he said seriously, the opportunity is at the upcoming Five Nations Summit. This time, Konoha shouldn't have me as an envoy, because you fell off the cliff and disappeared, and the third Hokage was also worried that I would do something irrational and wouldn't be able to help but attack the third Hokage in public, but at this time, Shimura Danzo found me. Minato's face was solemn, and he said solemnly, Konoha must never do nothing. Chapter 288 The Daimyo Lord and Hokage. The Five Nation Talks are a meeting convened by the participating nations when a major decision is being made. Unlike the Five Cage Summit, which is held when conflicts arise or when a major decision affecting the future of the ninja world is imminent, the Cage do not meet in person. The ninja villages of each nation only send envoys. The participating nations then assess the attitudes of various factions, deliberate, and announce their upcoming major decisions. The fundamental purpose of the Five Nation Talks convened by the Land of Lightning is for the Daimyo of Lightning and the Third Hokage to jointly decide on the direction of Lightning's course in the Third Shinobi World War. However, the outcome of the talks is confirmed beforehand, and the reason for the meeting is that, for the first time, the Daimyo of Lightning and the Third Hokage have differed in opinion. At this moment, in the Hidden Cloud Village, within the rebuilt Hokage building, Hokage, you must understand, this is an opportunity to unite the four nations of Fengshu, Litu, and Tu to jointly defeat the Land of Fire. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A middle-aged man with gold-rimmed glasses, dark skin, and elegant attire leaned back in the seat that once belonged to the Hokage. He rested his cheek on his raised fist, his gaze brooding as the third Hokage stood respectfully before him, his chest bandaged, his fierce aura suppressed. This man was none other than the greatest lord, the most powerful dignitary of this land, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, Ryuzaji Nobuyuki. He was a renowned ruler with a strict political policy and strong ruling power, known for his unwavering stance. He provided abundant support to Kumagakure in all its foreign wars, both past and future. In the original novel, Kumagakure launched the Second Shinobi World War, the invasion of the Land of Rice during the Third Shinobi World War, the raid on Iwagakure, the Battle of Kukiwama following the Third Shinobi World War, the war against Konoha before Naruto's graduation, before the abduction of Hinata, the heir to the Hyuga clan, and even the later Fourth Shinobi World War with his deep thoughts and powerful tactics. He was a masterful ruler, developing science and technology domestically while waging wars and plundering other nations for his own advancement. Even when his opponents were inferior to his own, the Third Hokage dared not underestimate him. He even treated them with respect. Unlike the two major ninja villages of Konoha and Kurigakure, which are home to many powerful blood-stained families in the Warring States period, the blood-stained families are rare. The Hidden Cloud Village, which was purely formed by a group of whimsical people who formed a brotherhood, can grow to its current size thanks to the unremitting support of the daimyo of this country. At this time, seeing that the Third Hokage pretended not to understand his words like a rolled man, Ryuzaji Shin rubbed his brows, frowned and glanced at the Third Hokage, and shouted sternly, "The Fire Country, relying on Konoha alone, cannot withstand the joint invasion of the four countries. You should know this better than me, but if you still want to stick to the previous plan, you must give this general a reasonable explanation. Otherwise, this general will help you make a decision at the five-country talks." Yes, the Third Hokage bowed slightly and took a step forward. His old face was full of solemnity, and he said seriously, "General, the four countries' attack on the Fire Country is the main theme of the Third Ninja World War, but Orochimaru's plan to collapse Kumagakure has made it impossible for us to go deep into the Land of Rice and use this route to attack Konoha and divide the Fire Country's territory. In this case, this war will be of no benefit to us, and will only help other countries. However, if we follow the plan, we can attack the rear of Iwagakure by advancing, and we can also make a real move by retreating, and use the Land of Earth to attack the Land of Fire. Now, we only need an opportunity." "What opportunity?" Ryuzaji Nobuyuki's eyes fixed, looking at the Third Hokage. "Five Nation Talks," the Third Hokage said solemnly, "unite all the countries, as daimyo, and personally sign a joint attack agreement to gain the trust of Iwagakure and Oki." Upon hearing this, the face of a guardian ninja who was guarding beside Ryuzaji Nobuyuki changed drastically. Two cold rays suddenly shot out of his eyes. He glared at the Third Hokage and shouted angrily, "The chaos in Yunming City is now revealed. Hokage, do you want the general to take risks, The third Raikage did not speak, but lowered his head and sighed. Not long ago, the castle tower collapsed, and the information about the assassin's third attack had been sent to Younger Cure through the Sky Song technique. It didn't matter who the person was. But now, everyone in Yunming City knew that the daimyo in the castle tower was a sham. And to unite the nations and forge such a credible alliance, only the daimyo himself could do so. Chaos had already set in, and now he had no choice but to take advantage of the situation. But he couldn't force the daimyo of the Land of Lightning on such a matter, he could only wait for the daimyo's personal decision. At that moment, Ryuzaji Shin simply narrowed his eyes and glanced at the third Raikage, a dark and inexplicable look in his eyes. Unlike a guardian nin, he was concerned only with his own safety, so he naturally discerned the deeper meaning behind the third Raikage's words. On the surface, the third Raikage's words were meant to put him in personal danger. But with a powerful third Raikage, known as the speediest shinobi, who roamed the ninja world unmatched, protecting him, safety was a minor concern. The third Raikage would certainly protect him with his life. More crucially, this move was essentially forcing the daimyo to sign an alliance that was doomed to be broken. In other words, the third Raikage was undermining his credibility as the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Ninjas naturally act without scruples, resorting to any dirty tricks to achieve victory. But as a ruler, he was no ninja. This was what concerned Ryuzaji Nobu most, and what caused him to hesitate. Perhaps this was the true purpose of the third Raikage before him? Ryuzaji Nobuyuki had no idea what was going on, so he just closed his eyes and pondered for a long time. Finally, he opened his eyes, and a captivating aura was revealed in his eyes. I agree to this. Then, he looked at the third Raikage, a hint of struggle in his eyes. Raikage, I never asked about matters of war, and I always gave the power to you, because trust is the first and most fundamental brotherhood between the Land of Lightning and Kumagakure. And it is the foundation that has allowed the Land of Lightning to grow from weakness to strength step by step. I only hope. Don't forget this. Hearing this, the third Raikage looked fixedly at the daimyo in front of him, his eyes suddenly filled with emotion, and even his old body, which was bowing, trembled slightly. Unlike the rigid or mutually restrained relationships between daimyo and ninja villages in other countries, Kumagakure truly has a famous lord who gives them unconditional trust. Yes. Chapter 289 Minato, I also want to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. Yunming City's location mirrored that of Kumagakure village, nestled in an open expanse of towering peaks. Its buildings, nestled against the peaks and forming their foundations, towered into the heavens, creating a truly imposing presence. From the inner walls of the city center, towering even taller than the peaks, one gazed down upon 1,000 mountains like blades, clouds and mist like banners, a truly magnificent sight. But when Uchiha Chi, led by Namikaze Minato, actually entered the city, they discovered that, unlike the exhilarating sight that made them eager to type another 300 words, the residents here mostly wore tired, thin figures, and gloomy expressions. They walked with their heads lowered, like office workers trying to decide whether paying the fuel tax or falling oil prices was more cost-effective. Walking down the street, no one would even glance at them, even when Uchiha Chi and Namikaze Minato, dressed in conical hats and long black robes, looked mysterious, their attire practically emblazoned with the words "I am a terrorist." Watching this scene, Uchiha Chi sighed. The Land of Lightning is already located at a high altitude, and the spurred-like city's buildings are built against the mountain peaks, with so much flat space below seemingly unused. Walking there felt like returning to a mountain city in a previous life. It wasn't long before a steep slope appeared, and it was truly surprising that he wasn't tired. Namikaze Minato, standing nearby, thought Uchiha Chi was feeling pity for the civilians of the Land of Lightning. He also took a look, then sighed and said, "The Land of Lightning is different from our Fire Land. This country values war and aggressiveness, and has been plundering foreign countries for years. To ensure sufficient military funds, they impose extremely high taxes, so, war and aggressive?" Uchiha Chi curled his lips, watching a group of elderly men in their 70s carrying baskets of coal up the mountain not far away, solely to deliver the coal to the luxurious building at the top. He thought to himself that this was truly war and aggressive. Not only did they fight against the heavens, the earth, ninja from other countries, but they also fought against their own people. So what happened to the fruits of their struggle? Aside from the portion that went to Kumagakure to bolster their military, where did the rest go? Why were the buildings on the mountaintop so ornate, And why were people riding sedan chairs to the summit? Could this be some new tourist attraction? While it might be due to circumstances and national conditions, Uchiha Chi's distaste grew. Of the 5 major ninja nations, the most technologically advanced was the Land of Lightning. They had even invented groundbreaking gadgets like the chakra cannon, yet the common people still relied on the traditional horse-drawn system, and the landowners and nobles indulged in this primitive pleasure. This world shouldn't be like this. These nobles should have been captivated by the arena built by Miyashiro En, wielding their wealth while waving their money in a Roman-style gladiatorial arena. How ridiculous. Of course, Uchiha Chi only muttered inwardly, after all, it had nothing to do with a passing handsome man like him. Let's go. Uchiha Chi soon lost interest in talking. He said nothing along the way. Namikaze Minato took him out of the prosperous inner city, through the mountains, and walked on the suspension bridges connecting the mountain platforms on the peaks. As the sky grew darker, he listened to the increasingly loud thunder in the clouds, and finally came to a somewhat dilapidated building that looked like a Baroque style, as shown in the picture. Where's this? Uchiha Chi raised his head and looked at the desolate and dilapidated building that looked like no one had lived in it for years. He remembered that this kind of building actually appeared in the original manga. It appeared when the immortal duo of Hiden and Kokuzu captured the two-tailed Jinchuriki, the two Yukitas. However, what made Uchiha Chi sigh was that the immortal duo seemed to have become his own people, and the two Yukitas who confronted them died at his hands. It was equivalent to him stealing Kokuzu and Hiden's jobs more than 10 years in advance. Looking at it this way, he seemed like a villain. Is it a welfare project? There are many tube-shaped buildings originally built for civilians to live in the Land of Fire, but I don't know why they were abandoned in the Land of Lightning. There are not many people here. I've been here recently. Minato shook his head, pushed open the rickety wooden door, and walked into the building that looked like a haunted house. He took out a fire starter from his ninja tool bag and rubbed it, holding it up to light the way. Uchiha Chi followed, a hint of curiosity rising in his heart. What are you doing here? Also, when you were in the inner city, you said Danzo found you. What did he say? Shimura Danzo was nominally Uchiha Chi's boss. He was incompetent at everything, but when it came to his ability to stir up trouble in the ninja world, Uchiha Chi had no doubt about his expertise. But it was rare for Danzo to choose to join forces with a little-known figure like Minato Namikaze. Minato's azure eyes darkened, and he forced a smile. He didn't respond, but led Uchiha Chi into a room and touched the wall. Click. A white light flickered on, illuminating the interior. In the center of the room lay a densely marked map, with delicate handwriting and some incomprehensible lines. The Land of Lightning was highlighted. On either side of the room were shabby tables and chairs, and on the tables lay a stack of opened letters. Looking at the map of the ninja world that was obviously very expensive and so detailed that even the direction of the mountains and the towns along the way were clearly marked, Uchiha Chi raised his eyebrows slightly. If he had this thing, why would he have spent so much time in the Frost Country with two people who were directionally challenged? Just when Uchiha Chi wanted to ask if he could get a copy of the map, Minato was already standing in front of the map. He turned his head solemnly and looked at Uchiha Chi and said, "Listen, see, didn't you ask me what the relationship is between Konoha's plan and the upcoming Five-Nation Summit? Now, I'll tell you." Namikaze Minato said solemnly, "We have reached a consensus with Danzo Shimura, a decision and action that goes against the will of the third Hokage." Hearing this, Uchiha Chi opened his mouth slightly, a little stunned. Danzo would oppose Sarutobi Hiruzen's opinion and even make a decision contrary to it. Uchiha Chi was not surprised at all, and even thought it was normal. But Danzo could actually convince the little son Namikaze Minato to go along with him, then this matter became a bit strange. Thinking of this, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but frown. He didn't continue to ask what Danzo was going to do. Instead, he seized on the key point in Minato's words and asked, "You guys, besides you? Who else?" Danzo had approached Namikaze Minato to discuss the Lightning Kingdom because he knew of their close friendship and would likely use this to persuade Minato. Besides, the core participants in the Hell Valley incident were Orochimaru and his apprentice duo. Danzo definitely couldn't pawn Orochimaru, so who else could he turn to? If Minato had accomplices, Uchiha Chi felt a subtle sense of unease, subconsciously feeling that this person must be connected to him. "It's the captain of the police force, Uchiha Fugaku." Minato took a deep breath, his eyes fixed, and he said seriously, "We are going to do something extremely treasonous." 6 days later, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, together with the third Raikage, will definitely appear at the Five Nation talks, and we will take action there to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, the main executor of this plan, and the one who will bear all the responsibility for the entire incident." Minato exhaled deeply, and said bluntly with a heavy face, "It's me." Hearing this, looking at the other party's solemn expression of a martyr, Uchiha felt his scalp tingling, and stared at Namokaze Minato with horror. "What? You want to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Lightning too?" "That's right." Namokaze Minato's face was determined. "If there is someone in this world who can truly assassinate a country's daimyo in front of the third Raikage, it must be me who masters the Flying Thunder God technique." Chapter 290, Minato's Vision, the Land of Thunder and Fire. "Are you serious?" Looking at Minato, whose expression didn't seem fake but rather resolute, Uchiha's face instantly darkened. He stared at Minato intently and demanded in a deep voice, "Don't you know what the consequences of doing this are? Assassinating a daimyo is a serious crime, unacceptable to all nations, especially at a five-nation talks. Hasn't it occurred to you that this could make you a traitor? Minato, isn't your dream to become Hokage? Are you going to abandon your dream?" Indeed, Namokaze Minato was the one most capable of carrying out the feat of assassinating a daimyo at the hands of the third Raikage and escaping unscathed. However, Uchiha hoped that this was just an impulsive, hot-blooded thought, an act of revenge for his companions' deaths. Seeing that he was still alive, perhaps he would change his mind? But alas, this was not to be. Namokaze Minato did not show his usual confident and gentle smile. The expression on his face was very calm. It was a calm expression that only appeared after understanding everything and experiencing painful thinking and enlightenment. It was like the Nanga River gurgling in the setting sun, reflecting the determination that only martyrs could understand. "See, you should be clear about Konoha's original plan. With Lord Orochimaru's surprise attack ahead, we only need to protect the daimyo and wait and see what happens. Then we can stand firm against the Kumagakure in this third Shinobi World War and remain invincible, and Konoha will certainly be able to reap the fruits of Lord Orochimaru's implementation of the Kumagakure collapse plan. However, the final result will not change. The Fire Nation, with its rich land, is the target of public criticism. The other nations will not allow Konoha to continue to grow stronger. Even if Konoha survives this Shinobi World War, the next time, and the next time, war will eventually come to Konoha." Namokaze Minato stood in front of the map, pointing to the core location of Konoha's 4 battlegrounds on the map, and said in a deep voice, "This is a fact that cannot be avoided." Then he looked directly at Uchiha. As the Hokage's assistant, Shimura Danzo may have many faults, but his vision is correct. To change this, someone must make a sacrifice. After hearing this, Uchiha couldn't hold it in any longer. He just felt that Danzo must have put Little Son on the electric chair and brainwashed him severely. Otherwise, why would this smart guy just not listen no matter how much he tried to persuade him? He simply stepped forward, grabbed Minato Namokaze's collar, pulled his head down, and looked into his closed eyes. Then, Uchiha stared at Minato with a horrified look, suppressing the inexplicable irritation that rose in his heart, and shouted, "Sacrifice? What sacrifice? What does this have to do with sacrifice? Minato, listen, don't be fooled by Danzo. This old thing only wants the position of Hokage, and only wants Konoha that belongs to him. He instigated you to prevent you from becoming Hokage, to make you lose the qualification to compete with him. Daimyo is just a position. Even if you kill the person sitting in that position, the new daimyo will take office the next day, and the system of the ninja world will continue, and you will only bury your dream and become a rebel ninja. You will only regret your unwise move for countless nights. You simply don't understand how insignificant individual power is in the face of the system that governs society, and you certainly don't have the strength to overturn the table and sweep everything away." Uchiha's face was tense, and he slammed his head hard against Minato's forward protector. He stared at him intently, gritting his teeth and saying, "Can you wake up for a moment?" Even though he had the awareness to change the world for the people he cherished, Uchiha didn't do it immediately, didn't rewrite everything. Instead, he chose to lie dormant, chose to continue hiding his fangs, chose to accumulate strength, and wait until he truly possessed the strength to overturn the table. It was precisely because he understood. However, even after being hit on the head with a headbutt from Uchiha, with blood slid down the Konoha forward protector, across the nose, and down to the corner of his jaw, Minato didn't get angry at all. On the contrary, he smiled gently, looking directly at Uchiha with an extremely confident and extremely happy look. "Sure enough, You are such a person, Uchiha Chi, you see it more clearly than anyone else, and you know better than anyone else that for a ninja, the daimyo is a stubborn disease. Then, he changed the subject, took Uchiha Chi's arm, and brought him to the edge of the map. Minato pointed to the location of Yunming City on the map, and said seriously, but, see, even if you want to escape again, the changes in the ninja world that have not been seen in 1,000 years have been caused by you. Now there are undercurrents in Yunming City, and everyone has set their sights on the daimyo. Some of them may be hesitant, some give up halfway, and some are still considering it, but, the murderous intention has arisen. The daimyo is no longer an untouchable person. Then, Minato stretched out his finger, dipped a little of the blood on his face, and drew a horizontal stroke on the map, connecting the Kingdom of Thunder and the Kingdom of Earth. That bloodline spanned the ocean like a chasm between the two countries. It seemed as if one could see countless ninjas wearing Kumagakure and Iwagakure forward protectors fighting each other. Blood flowed like a river, corpses were everywhere, and one could hear the continuous wails of pain. The current situation, Kumagakure is bound to clash with Iwagakure, kill the daimyo now and support his son Ryuzaji Sudani to take the throne. After the Battle of Iwagakure, we can take the opportunity to severely damage the Land of Lightning. In addition to the various confidential intelligence obtained by Lord Orochimaru, there is intelligence that Kumagakure has not had time to update. Minato raised his finger again and pressed on the border of the Fire Country, the position of the Land of Field. With a horizontal stroke, he directly connected the territories of the Fire Country and the Land of Lightning. Then, he shouted excitedly, at this time, Konoha, you should cross the Land of Field and take the Land of Thunder and Fire, subdue the three countries of Field, Soup, and Frost. Once this situation is established, we have the 5 small countries of Iron, Taki, Grass, Rain, and Valley as barriers above us, and we have the Water Country below to provide backup. With this land, we only need to face the enemy in the west. And at least it can help Konoha build a stable territory for 100 years, connecting the vast territory on the map with the blood. Minato's breathing became heavy, and he couldn't help but imagine, our next generation and the next generation will be able to live here in peace. There will be no need to go to such a cruel battlefield at this age like you and Kakashi. Looking at the bloody and crisscrossed map in front of him, Uchiha Chi fell silent. Even with his eyes, he had to admit that this was indeed a godsend. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291 Uchiha Chi, Become Hokage. If we can seize this fleeting opportunity. If everything goes as Minato envisions. If the barrier of the land of water formed by the daimyo's son, Ryuzaji Sudani, and the alliance with Kurigakure, as Minato described it, is true, then this move will surely rewrite the world order. After a moment of silence, Uchiha Chi raised his head and stared at Minato in a daze. You weren't brainwashed by Danzo, and that's why you want to kill the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, to incite the son of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning to rebel, and to unite with Kurigakure. You left Kakashi behind and hide here alone. Was it to plan these two things? Yes. Namikaze Minato nodded and gave Uchiha Chi a gentle smile, like the warm sun in June, and like the setting sun gradually setting in the dusk. For this, I will become a traitor. Uchiha Chi fell silent again. After taking a few deep breaths, he raised his head again and stared at Minato. He gritted his teeth, and his expression gradually distorted. Then he asked angrily, after killing the daimyo, Konoha will no longer tolerate you, and your dream of becoming Hokage will be shattered. Even so, do you still want to do it? You've become a traitor, and what will happen to Kushina? She's someone so closely connected to you, a traitor, a replaceable vessel for a tail beast, a pitiful creature like a Jinchuriki. Didn't you consider Kushina? Hearing this, Namikaze Minato's smile faded. He remained silent, a trace of guilt crossing his face. Beyond that, Uchiha Chi wanted to ask, if you do this, what about your unborn son? Let's say, the savior of this world. Hell, could there really be a Naruto from the Akatsuki organization in the future? A long, silent pause fell between the two of them. Until Minato took a deep breath, then, he raised his hands, patted Uchiha Chi's shoulders, and said with a forced smile, as if entrusting his last wishes, this is exactly what makes me happy. At this time, in this foreign country, I actually see you again. There are the achievements in Jigakurani, and the unspeakable merit I am about to perform, plus the favor of Lord Orochimaru, in the turmoil that is about to come in Konoha, facing the wrath of the daimyo of the various nations, and the short-term war against the four countries, taking on the responsibility in the face of defeat, receiving orders in the midst of danger, Minato persuaded him word by word, solemnly and firmly, Uchiha Chi. Become Hokage, just think of it as doing it for me, for Kushina, and to fulfill our unfulfilled dreams. As soon as he finished speaking, Uchiha Chi looked up in astonishment. Hearing Minato's outrageous words, his mind froze for a long time. Me, become Hokage? Uchiha Chi shuddered at the thought of the position embodied by the word Hokage. The first thing that came to mind wasn't the image of him in his elegant Hokage robes, greeted by cheers, or standing on a power pole, Kune raised to face some terrifying beast. Instead, it was the endless workload, the agonizing daily grin of being unable to return home, the hypocritical grins he faced with bared teeth, and the wrinkled, sullen faces of the four old Bidens of Konoha's F4, hovering over him. No, you want me to do this? I'd rather take down the daimyo of the Land of Lightning in your place. Uchiha Chi instinctively wanted to refuse, but before he could say anything, the sound of footsteps clattered outside the door. Bang! The door was forcefully pushed open by a delicate, fair hand. Konoha, urgent news. A familiar voice reached Uchiha Chi, trailing off with a breathless, crisp, and resolute sound. He instinctively turned his head, and the next moment, he saw the girl in front of the doorway, dressed in a blue, strapless cheongsam, a black corset, and a dark cloak. She had just removed her bamboo hat, her long, reddish-brown hair flowing in the air. Upon catching sight of him, her emerald green eyes subconsciously contracted, a look of surprise on her face, referred to the childhood version of Xia Yingjiang. And this girl was none other than Maid Arumi, the one who had recently rescued Hidden, robbed the execution ground in broad daylight, and caused the castle tower's collapse, along with all the subsequent events. Uchiha Chi was startled. So, the Kurigakure member contacted by Minato Namikaze was actually her? Seeing each other, they were both stunned. Neither had expected to see each other here. They wanted to say something, but the words hesitated at the same time. At this moment, Minato saw Maid Arumi and Meijetsu Ozuki approaching, and a glint of joy appeared in his eyes. You're here? Then he pushed Uchiha Chi, who was standing beside him. See, let me introduce you. This is the Water Country envoy who contacted me, representing the Elder Master of Kurigakure. Ahem, no introductions needed. Uchiha Chi glanced at Maid Arumi standing at the door and Meijetsu Ozuki, who was looking at him unkindly with a large sword as big as a door panel slung behind her. He coughed quickly to cover up the awkwardness on his face. We should know each other. Oh, really? That's easy. Minato looked at the two people with a strange look in his eyes. Although he didn't know what was going on, the look that the Kurigakure genius girl named Maid Arumi gave seemed resentful. It was a bit like the look Kushina gave him. But for now, business should be the priority. He immediately looked at Maid Arumi and asked with some urgency, Messenger from Kurigakure, what emergency has caused you to come here in such a hurry? Maid Arumi glanced at Uchiha Chi's eyes that had been closed, and her heart was slightly blocked, but she also knew that this was not the time to reminisce about the past, so she took a deep breath. There are two pieces of news, one good and one bad. She first looked at Uchiha Chi, and after struggling for a moment, she said with difficulty, the bad thing is that Hidden, who was found and protected by C, has disappeared. When Uchiha Chi heard the first half of this sentence, he was stunned. He thought to himself that this was really a case of searching for something without any effort, and this kid Hidden was actually in Maid Arumi's hands. Isn't it like a flood washing away the Dragon King Temple, and family members don't recognize each other? However, when he heard the second half of the sentence, he couldn't help but be shocked. Missing. How could it be? Terumi Mei's face looked a little ugly, and she frowned and said, yes, she disappeared strangely under the close supervision of 4 Kurigakure guards. There was no sign of struggle. It was in the afternoon when we went out to the inner city to verify the information given by Namikaze Minato. When Terumi Mei said this, Namikaze Minato turned his head and explained to Uchiha Chi, who was confused about the content of Terumi Mei's words. This information was given by Fugaku, which is the channel I told you before to contact the daimyo's son. Only a 1,000-year-old clan like the Uchiha, which has a cooperative relationship with the daimyo of the Land of Lightning before the village was built, has the ability and relationship to directly contact the top leaders of the Land of Lightning. Uchiha Chi nodded suddenly. the direct manifestation of what Minato said is the garrison mission of Hell Valley. This mission assigned to the Uchiha clan was issued by the daimyo of the Land of Lightning and existed before the advent of the ninja village era. The Uchiha clan, a 1,000-year-old ninja clan, was considered a popular top-tier mercenary during the Warring States period. And the information that Uchiha Fugaku provided in collaboration with Minato should be this one. He probably wouldn't dare to do anything else. This matter was known to the top leaders of Konoha, and all the responsibilities and consequences were borne by Minato Namikaze. It was for this reason that Uchiha Fugaku agreed to cooperate and help Minato. After telling the bad news, Madarumi turned her head and looked at Minato Namikaze. Her face became serious, and she said solemnly, "Speaking of this, another thing, which can be considered good news is, Namikaze Minato, the channel you provided is effective. We have contacted the daimyo's son, Ryuzaji Sudani, and he has agreed to our conditions. Now, follow me. This noble man will summon you immediately." Chapter 292, Thunder God's Sword, Buto Yuhan. The thick clouds in the sky turned from white to red, then faded. Along with them, the city known as Yunming City gradually sank into the darkness. Beneath the gloomy, boundless sky, birds fluttered their wings, landing on utility poles, their heads tilted as they gazed down at the desolate streets. And then there were the figures swiftly passing through, Uchiha Chi, Namikaze Minato, Terumi Mei, and Hazuki Maingetsu. In this dreary, silent, and even somewhat oppressive atmosphere, it felt as if a raging fire scorched the night wind. In this long-awaited reunion, the return of an old enemy, a farewell between life and death, at this moment of impending doom, no one spoke, yet everyone wanted to. But they were ninjas, ninjas working for their own great cause. And ninjas needed to control their emotions. Even Uchiha Chi could only sigh in regret. Shimura Danzo had truly orchestrated a remarkable show. Even with his eyes closed, through this mind's eye, he could see, next to him, Kitano Maingetsu, now bearing sharp fangs, stared at him intently with a single purple eye, suppressed with fighting spirit. His palm caressed the broad blade of Hiram Flounder, like a thirsty old man about to unleash a beautiful woman's omen, his fierce fighting and murderous intent surging. Meanwhile, the dashing beauty on the other side was no longer carefree. From time to time, she would turn her head and gaze at his face, gazing at his closed eyes, hesitant to speak. The expression on her face was heartbreaking. Seeing the person who had unknowingly become the heart's most precious worry, Uchiha Chi wanted to stop, hug her tightly, open his eyes, and tell her in the most nonchalant tone, "I'm fine. Look, these eyes are so beautiful." But Uchiha Chi couldn't. Because of Kakashi, the moment these eyes opened, they would become a murderous eye technique. Compared to fighting, talking, and being honest with each other, the most important thing now was to stop the friend before them, whose smile was so painfully suppressed, and to prevent him from making such a meaningless sacrifice. Thus, the group walked into the silent night. No one spoke, yet everyone seemed to have spoken a lot. Finally, crack, the sound of feet crunching rough stone echoed, and the four of them landed in front of a high peak not far from the inner city. Before them, the huge vermilion door opened a crack, and two huge stone statues of God stood guard at the gate, spears and swords raised, claws and fangs bared. Soon, a youthful voice, both imposing and lacking in confidence, resplendent and yet dim, wafted from the room. "Are you here to see me, then, Konoha's envoy? Please proceed, I wish to see you in person." Upon hearing this, Minato Namikaze's expression darkened. He took a deep breath, his face a solemn expression like a martyr's. Then, with a resolute stride, he headed towards the vast inner courtyard. Ninjas exist to protect. This was Minato Namikaze's righteousness. Shimura Danzo's persuasion only opened the door to this direction. His true motivation for this decision was his deep understanding that as long as the ninja system existed, a truly peaceful order might be impossible. The very existence of the ninja system stemmed from its mercenary nature. This system restricted ninjas' potential for development, rendering them mere pawns for the powerful and cold, ruthless weapons of destruction. How could love arise from tools of murder? Perpetuating hatred and forming an unbreakable bond is their destiny. And now, Namikaze Minato will carry out his will, using the hole accidentally opened by Uchiha Chi to become the first to sacrifice himself to rewrite the ninja system. He will assassinate the daimyo, but he won't just kill the person who holds that position. He will also destroy their power, sever their respect, and deprive them of their position. He will also nominate Uchiha Chi, who is recognized by him and can clearly see all this. Let this young and beloved friend be the one standing in the light. Accept all his gifts, protect Kushina, protect everyone in the village, heal the rift between the Uchiha clan and the village, and command this twisted force. Ultimately, he will become Hokage and establish an era truly belonging to the ninja. An era of freedom. And he, Namikaze Minato, will serve as the guardian in the darkness, silently protecting all of this. Of course, it would be even better if Kushina could stop calling him an idiot. Namikaze Minato pondered this, unknowingly entering the gate. "See, why are you following?" To Minato's surprise, Uchiha Chi followed him closely. "Are you an old man? Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Uchiha Chi raised an eyebrow, snorted coldly, and said simply, "Can't I just see you off?" Hearing this, Minato's heart warmed, and a bright smile spread across his face. He asked this question out of concern that this unknown daimyo's son might be setting up an ambush. He had nothing to fear, but Uchiha Chi, without his Sharingan and tailed beast, was no longer as powerful as he once was. But after some thought, he let Uchiha Chi follow. He believed that with his flying thunder god jutsu, even if he faced a formidable foe like the third Hokage, he could at least lead Uchiha Chi back unscathed. Passing through the vermilion gates and past the waterside pavilion, the two men, striding resolutely in the night breeze, soon arrived at a palace-like building. A pale-skinned young man, a hint of fear in his eyes, sat upright on the main throne. This man was none other than Ryuzaji Sugu, the son of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning and the young prince of the Land of Lightning. To his left and right stood a row of warriors, their hands on their sheaths, gazing menacingly at the two men entering the hall. Uchiha Chi frowned slightly. With his enhanced mind's eye senses, he could sense from within the palace that there were still people hiding behind the gauze covering the beams. There were quite a few of them, and their bodies were emitting chakra fluctuations. It seemed that the young prince of the Land of Lightning was quite insecure. Neither party spoke until Minato and the others approached. Ryuzaji Sugu, the son of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, seated on the high throne, finally took a closer look at the two men before him. His eyes directly ignored Uchiha Chi, who was also very handsome, but had ordinary black hair, was shorter than Minato, and seemed to be blind, looking like a follower. His eyes fell on the handsome and extraordinary Namikaze Minato. After seeing Namikaze Minato's iconic golden hair, Ryuzaji Sugu seemed to be relieved, and then asked curiously, "You are Namikaze Minato, the ninja known as the Yellow Flash?" The person in front of him was a young prince from a foreign country. Minato did not seem humble or arrogant in the face of this scene. He just bowed slightly and agreed, "Yes, young master." Ryuzaji Sugu asked with a little excitement, "I already know the conditions you conveyed to this young master, and I have no objection, but I heard that you are very strong. How strong are you?" The strange thing is that at this moment, surprisingly, the daimyo's son, Ryuzaji Sugu, wasn't most concerned about Minato's unorthodox conditions. He actually agreed to all of them, even when Minato told him the man he was going to kill was his father, and he didn't even show any displeasure. Noticing this, combined with his insecure demeanor, the additional personnel within the palace, and the series of horrific events that had occurred in Yunming City during that absurd day, Uchiha Chi suddenly felt enlightened. He began to understand why the daimyo's son had chosen to meet with Minato at this moment. Faced with such a straightforward question, Namikaze Minato wanted to be modest, but at this moment, Uchiha Chi suddenly interrupted from behind him and said calmly and indifferently, "He is very strong, so strong that he can keep you safe even when everyone outside wants to kill you. See, you." Hearing this, even though it was the truth, Minato couldn't help but glare at Uchiha Chi in reproach. Sure enough, the samurai who was guarding Ryuzaji Sugu on the side saw that Uchiha Chi was so rude, his eyes immediately turned cold, and he shouted angrily, "How dare you? How dare you be so arrogant in front of the young master?" However, before the samurai finished scolding, Ryuzaji Sugu, who was sitting in the first seat, stood up with an excited look on his face. Good. He stared at Namikaze Minato as if he was looking at a rare, invincible Guangong sword, and the whites of his eyes were unconsciously covered with bloodshot. After receiving such a straightforward and arrogant response from Uchiha Chi, far from being angry, he stood up with his hands and feet dancing, and spoke to Minato with great emotion. "Minato-kun, I already know what you want to do, and I already had such an idea in my mind." At this point, the son of the daimyo could not help but raise his head and laugh wildly. Good, Ryuzaji Nobu, You have lost all humanity and abandoned your wife and children. In the face of danger, you hid in the hidden cloud village alone. You actually left me alone to face so many bandits." After laughing, his expression changed again, becoming hideous, distorted, and terrifying, as if he had swallowed an unpeeled durian. He clenched his fists tightly and kicked over the table in front of him with a bang. "A man who cowardly refuses to fight is not a lord, even if he is my father, the monarch of this country. He must be punished." Hearing Ryuzaji Sugu's words and seeing his father's behavior, Minato couldn't help but frown slightly. This son of the daimyo was acting like a frightened bird. This made Minato worry that the plan he had conspired with him could really be accomplished in the hands of such a man. When Minato frowned like this, Ryuzaji Sugu was immediately startled, as if he was afraid that this extremely powerful ninja would abandon him if he was displeased. He hurriedly waved his sleeves and shouted to his subordinates, "Quick, bring this young master the national treasure inherited from the Land of Lightning. I want to give it to Minato-sama, that legendary artifact, the Thunder God's Sword, Butsume Mikado." Chapter 293. The moment the madman opens his eyes. When everyone expects someone to die, it simply means they truly deserve it. However, the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, the one whose hopes were high, the one who hoped for a tragic, absurd, and outrageous death, preferably shot 8 times, stabbed 99 times, and ultimately hanged himself, was incredibly resourceful. Sensing the first assassination attempt, he fled overnight to the hidden cloud village, where he embraced the muscular chest of the third Hokage, enjoying the most secure protection in the world. And the son he left behind, the young lord of the Land of Lightning, Ryuzaji Tsurani, witnessed that very day the Iwagakure ninja, old Murasaki, break into the castle tower and transform into a terrifying, crimson creature with 4 swaying tails. Then, the very people who had crushed his mother, his concubines, and a host of powerful, wealthy uncles, their warehouses full of gold, symbols of power and wealth, seals, and priceless status symbols, became like scrap paper before the benevolent ninja in his monk's robes. Each person crushed to death was like a fish on a chopping board, gasping for air in terror, unable to absorb a single drop of water. Then, they were thrown into a roasting oven. Of course, this was just Ryuzaji Tsurani's imagination, a tentative one, since, for some reason, he hadn't entered the castle tower. The entire tower had become an oven, a physical oven. In the end, everyone was transformed into lifelike roasted fish. Everything, the horrifying truth, was buried beneath the crumbling ruins. The ninja in monk's robes with a benevolent face turned around and jumped out again, addressing him respectfully in a serious tone, telling him, to comfort his terrified self, "Don't panic, Your Highness. I have already chased the murderer away." He even stroked his blood-stained beard with a smile. There are such ridiculous things in the world. At that moment, Ryuzaji Sugu, who felt as if he had fallen into an icy cave and had cold hands and feet, suddenly realized, awakened, and understood that power is the reason for being a king. He, without power, tried to control these all-powerful ninjas who could evaporate him on the spot with a wave of their hands, leaving him, the last person in the world who knew the truth, to pass away. It was simply playing with fire. And Ryuzaji Sugu knew that he had a chance to escape. He could give up everything and leave with the help of the power that secretly protected the daimyo's mansion. But if he were to give up everything he had gained so far, the power he had enjoyed for over 20 years, to become a lowly porter, carrying the petty nobles he once looked down upon to the summit of that mountain for a pittance barely enough to pay his taxes, he wouldn't be willing to do it, couldn't let go, and couldn't accept it. So, when the ninja known as the Golden Flash, Namikaze Minato, wrote to him, offering to be his strength, Ryuzaji Tsurani agreed without hesitation. Because, even if it was borrowed, at a price, asking for his help in killing his father, it was still strength. And now, the most important thing for him was to survive this night. This is a sacred weapon passed down from generation to generation in the Land of Thunder. In the Kajiki, this sword was once the sword of Takemikaze, the god of thunder. He accompanied him to kill the incarnation of the god Kumano, and serve the king of divine martial arts to come to the world and annihilate the evil demons. It is a sacred weapon that is known as the 3 great spiritual swords along with the Totsuka sword and the Aim no Murasakumo sword. Now, I wish to give it to Lord Minato. I hope Lord Minato can restore the glory of this sword, restore the ancient history of Takemikaze, the god of thunder, and serve the king of divine martial arts for a century. and help this young master ascend to the throne of the Lord of Thunder? Ryuza Chi struggled to hold the sword case containing the sacred weapon and held it horizontally in front of Namake's Minato. Then, this nobleman lowered his head, bent down, bowed deeply, and shouted in a choked voice, "I only hope that you will not let me down." Looking at the scene in front of him with his mind's eye, Uchiha's expression couldn't help but become a little strange. Ryuza Chi words were truly inspiring, and the superior's openness and unreserved sincerity towards a mere ninja was truly inspiring. If the person before him wasn't Minato Namake's, who was intent on destroying the entire ninja system, but some other ninja, perhaps they would have truly bowed down like the guardian ninja of Sarutobi Asuma, overcome with emotion. Furthermore, the illusion the Birdman had described was word for word accurate. However, when coupled with a surname and name similar to those of a former daimyo in Sakura country, things suddenly became strange. The surname Ryuza referred to the Ryuza family, known as the Bear of Hizen, and the rebel force Fudo Midamaslu was also known as the Kami of Kumano, also bearing the character bear in its name. It was as if Ryuza himself had come forward with a sword specifically designed to strike down his own demise, demanding allegiance from someone who aspired to revolutionize the world and was eager to hang him from a streetlight. This was a myth coming true. Shaking away this somewhat outrageous thought, Uchiha's gaze fell on the long sword box opened by Ryuza. Inside, he saw an extremely long, single-edged straight sword, its blade measuring 7 feet 4 inches long. It exuded a majestic aura unlike any ordinary longsword. The hilt, woven with golden iris, featured a ring in the middle. The hilt was longer on the left than on the right, and the blade was slender, with a hilt only 2 fingers wide and the tip of the blade only 1.5 fingers wide. Uchiha saw that this sword was clearly unfit for a slashing purpose, and nowhere near as effective as the Kusanagi sword Orochimaru had gifted him. It looked more like a sword that should be displayed in a museum, its majestic form on display. However, looking at this majestic sword before him, Uchiha felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. This sword seemed to be resonating with a power within him, a subtle yet subtle response. And the name of this power is, the third power, Susanoo. At that moment, Minato, looking at the precious sword presented by the daimyo's son, couldn't help but hesitate. It wasn't that he was a sage, but he truly felt nothing for it. After all, the word sacred weapon spoke of something precious. But, with his simple thoughts, he was wondering, how much was this thing worth? He was about to become a renegade ninja wandering the ninja world. While he could always use the flying thunder god jutsu to return home, he would no longer be able to rely on Konoha's quest system to support his family. Seeing the sword, he instinctively wondered if the antique dealers in Konoha would take it. Would the sale price be enough to buy Kushina a house in the heart of Konoha before she left? It didn't matter if he suffered a little, but he couldn't let Kushina suffer. However, at that moment, a hand reached into the sword sheath from the side and grasped the revered sword. Dang! Uchiha decisively drew it out, flicking it with his fingers. Hearing the sword's ringing echo through the hall, a look of amazement crossed his face. As he grasped the sword, a subtitle popped up before his eyes. You have acquired special equipment, Thunder God Sword, Butsu Mikao, Spiritual Sword, can be slotted into Susanoo's equipment slot, qualification, artifact. Above the hall, the warriors witnessed this scene, their faces filled with fury. To seize the sword presented by the young prince of the Land of Thunder, presented by a mere attendant, and not by the person who presented it, was sheer impudence. One of them could no longer endure it, stepped forward, and shouted angrily, "You bold lunatic, you insult the emperor in front of the palace, you really don't know any etiquette, why don't you kneel down and apologize to his highness?" At the end, he added, "Remember, you must get off your seat." However, when he heard the curse from behind him, Uchiha sneered, without turning his head, but just turned his head slightly, glanced indifferently at Ryuza, whose expression instantly stiffened, and asked calmly, "Why, do you have any objections?" Seeing this scene, hearing these arrogant words, looking at the kid in front of him who had no concept of politeness at all, Ryuza's eyes flashed with viciousness, but after a moment, he hid this expression, and showed a smirk on his face. How could it be? How could it be? As long as you like it. Uchiha didn't bother to pay attention to him, turned his head and looked back at Minato. At that moment, Minato couldn't help but smile gently as he watched Uchiha happily grasp the sword. If Uchiha liked it, the house issue could be put on hold. "Do you like this sword?" Uchiha shook his head, casually wielding the 7-meter long sword, longer than any other, in a dazzling display. "It's not a question of whether I like it or not," he asked calmly, looking up at Minato. "It's just, Minato, did you know that my Uchiha clan has a secret, forbidden, S-rank sword technique?" Hearing Uchiha Chi's words, Namake's Minato was taken aback. The long, impressive name of a secret, S-rank forbidden sword technique seemed quite fitting to his taste. He couldn't help but wonder, was this the technique he used when he single-handedly fought against 3 cage-level masters in Hell Valley? Or was it the same sword he used when they slew the 9 tails together, that piercing, 100-meter-long sword? However, while Minato was stunned, Uchiha Chi's face suddenly turned cold, and he swung the Thunder God's sword, Butsuyuhan, straight in his hand, slashing towards Minato Namake's face. The 2-meter-long straight blade slashed down with force, instantly slicing through the air and tearing through the air with a sonic boom. Swish! The cold blade shone brightly. No one in the hall had expected that Uchiha Chi, who looked like Minato Namake's follower, would actually attack him with horror. For a moment, you could hear a pin drop. Even Minato was startled, having never expected Uchiha Chi to actually attack him. However, his reflexes were extremely strong, and he instantly waved his hand and drew a flying Thunder God kunai from his waist. He twisted his body and stepped sideways, slashing at Uchiha Chi's sword, trying to block it. However, at this moment, before Minato Namake could ask what Uchiha Chi wanted to do, he was shocked to see that on the mirror-like sword blade, a pair of scarlet Sharingan opened by a blind man was suddenly reflected, with 3 black Magatama surrounding the black cross star-shaped pupil. Chapter 294, The Bond Battle ended in 1 second, the pupil technique of the Blood Dragon's 9 seals. At that moment, cold determination met with astonished bewilderment. Their gazes met over this revered sword. The scene in Minato Namake's vision immediately distorted, and the blood within his body began to surge and vibrate uncontrollably, causing his chakra to show signs of losing control. This was Uchiha Chi's foundational ability for eliminating his eye techniques, a compound bloodline, human blood manipulation. It didn't quite reach the level of eliminating bloodlines, but rather combined the 2 bloodline limits of illusion manipulation and blood vibration. It could simultaneously affect the enemy's body and mind, significantly slowing the perception. Furthermore, Uchiha Chi was certain that Minato Namake had never seen him use this kind of fighting style, integrating illusions into his swordsmanship. It would be easy for him to overlook this information. After all, Uchiha Chi hadn't yet mastered this ability when he fought alongside Konoha village in the Land of Rain just a few months ago. But Minato Namake was still Minato Namake, and even under the surprise attack, his reaction was incredibly fast. Before the eye technique affected him, his mind reacted with no delay, and in less than half a second, he made the most correct decision. He formed a single-handed summoning seal, unleashing the Maeboku mountain summoning technique. Minato was capable of forming seals with one hand, and this approach largely avoided the difficulty of forming seals due to the eye technique's shockwaves. Simultaneously, Minato immediately attempted to relocate using the Flying Thunder God Jutsu without seals. After moving to the outside world and using a summoned beast companion to dispel the illusion, he returned to his original position and continued fighting. However, since Uchiha Chi had chosen to launch a surprise attack, he had naturally anticipated this. Both sides possessed exceptionally precise reactions and battle strategies. Knowing his opponent's intelligence, Uchiha Chi could essentially predict everything Namake's Minato could imagine, including how Minato would employ his tactics once this predicament was resolved. Even at this point, before he had fully mastered all of his new abilities, even at his full strength, Uchiha Chi was likely no match for Minato. This included fully unleashing Susanoo, nearly blinding his eyes, and even forcing Susanoo to its 3rd stage at all costs. Even so, defeating Minato would remain difficult. In Yunming City, with a basic Rasengan upgraded and Minato possessing the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, he was the strongest opponent. However, beyond Uchiha Chi's basic abilities, which made his Dojutsu obsolete, he possessed a brand new Dojutsu, a technique that created a significant information gap and one that Minato was unaware of. Back at Kakashi's place, after Minato Namake appeared, Uchiha Chi immediately forgot to open his eyes and use his new Dojutsu to subdue Kakashi, choosing instead to conceal his Dojutsu abilities. This wasn't because he knew a confrontation with Minato would be inevitable. Rather, it was because his battle instincts didn't consciously distinguish between friend and foe. Under his intuition, everyone was a target for vigilance, including Minato, Orochimaru, and even Uchiha Setsuna. Faced with Minato's sudden, ghostly appearance, his battle instincts, etched into his muscle memory, instinctively forced him to maintain a backup plan. And at that moment, this backup plan, the Dojutsu eliminating ability, suddenly unleashed itself. Uchiha Chi immediately pulled back the hilt with his right hand, twisting the blade, deflecting the sword's light towards Minato. He simultaneously closed his right eye and, with his left hand, clasped the now open left. A dense, wild, dancing bloodshot quickly formed in the wide of his eye. And then, Kekai elimination, Dojutsu, 9 blood dragon seals. Launch in an instant. Tears of blood streamed down the corners of his eyes. Seeing this, Minato Namikaze was startled. Although he couldn't understand why Uchiha Chi would attack him, a strong sense of crisis enveloped him. Is he going to unleash the same sensual eye technique and illusion he used on the 9 tails back then? No, that's not right. This is the Sharingan's white eye, which doesn't incorporate sensual techniques. He closely followed Uchiha Chi's movements, deliberately avoiding his sight. In the process, his brain worked frantically, calculating the angle of refraction of the sword light in Uchiha Chi's hand, to prevent him from using that strange illusion sword technique again, and reflecting this eye technique into his sight. Moreover, Uchiha Chi had 360-degree vision and sage mode. Although Minato didn't see Uchiha Chi's sensual technique, he secretly kept this in mind. Whenever Uchiha Chi showed signs of unleashing a sensual technique, he would immediately close his eyes to avoid the effect of the sensual technique. Because, Minato knew, if struck by Uchiha Chi's eye technique, the white snake's power would jolt them into temporary unconsciousness, preventing them from using the Flying Thunder God Jutsu for a short period of time. And between speedsters like them, even a tenth of a second could decide life or death. The reason Uchiha Chi didn't use sage techniques was simple. Having lost his Zero Tail and the Heaven's Curse seal, he could only rely on the natural energy stored in his altered eyes to fuse into Sage Chakra. When he activated Sage Mode, the Heaven's Curse seal disappeared after Orochimaru and the White Snake Sage left Uchiha Chi's body. Referencing the original novel, Sasuke's Heaven's Curse seal disappeared after Orochimaru was sealed by Itachi with a Tenkan sword. Once Sage Mode was activated, veins would bulge around his eyes, resembling those of the Byakugan when activated. His gesture was too obvious. One look from Minato would likely lead him to flee with the Flying Thunder God Jutsu and engage in a more circumventive fight. As long as Minato's mode was activated, Uchiha Chi would be left staring blankly. After all, this thing was T0. Furthermore, Uchiha Chi had no way of telling whether the man had inflicted the Flying Thunder God mark on him when he'd slapped his shoulders, so he couldn't gamble. The only way to save Minato was now, in this battle between extreme speedsters, in this fleeting, calculated second, to knock him to the ground, unable to rise again. Damn it, Minato, take this righteous friendship punch of mine. Ow! It roared and roared, tackling Namikaze Minato with its head held high. Upon seeing the blood dragon, Namikaze Minato instantly realized something was amiss. How did this happen? How did I get caught in another genjutsu? He hadn't met Uchiha Chi's eyes, and he'd made sure not to stare at the sword light reflected by Uchiha Chi. But what was this jutsu like? He'd seen the intelligence from Tsunagakure and Kumagakure that revealed Uchiha Chi's abilities. It had clearly described the form of the Saijutsu, just as it was now, a blood dragon would appear. Then, in a flash, almost incapable of reaction, it would swallow the Dragon Ball and unleash the White Jiki Jutsu, unleashing a round of forced control over the target. In other words, the moment he saw the blood dragon, Namikaze Minato knew he might have been caught in another genjutsu by Uchiha Chi. And now, he was in real danger. And at that moment, faced with this extreme, unprecedented pressure and danger, an electric current seemed to surge through Minato Namikaze's spine, tingling from his crown to the soles of his feet, sending a tingling sensation throughout his body, as if a switch had been flipped. Then, his awareness sharpened, his reflexes swifter. Minato Namikaze was so incredible that, at this critical moment, he managed to complete a round of sit-ups in just 0.1 seconds. It was like when Uchiha Chi, facing Kokuzu's compound ninjutsu and facing near certain death, had elevated his combat instincts to a new level. Chapter 49. Minato Namikaze's inherent instincts, the same superb reflexes that enabled the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, were amplified at this moment. Even Uchiha Chi's eyes twitched wildly at the sight of this familiar scene, and he almost couldn't help but curse. This He's truly worthy of being the original protagonist's father, but it was no use. Because at this moment, Uchiha Chi was not relying on his reaction speed to challenge Namake's Minato, but on deception. Chapter 295 The era of daimyo is over. Eye Technique, 9 Seals of the Blood Dragon. This is a new eye technique developed by Uchiha Chi after the fusion of his Sharingan and Blood Dragon Eye. Of course, the fusion of a mere 3 Magatama Sharingan and a standard Blood Dragon Eye is unlikely to awaken a technique as powerful as the main Gekyo Eye technique. This eye technique is derived from the Blood Dragon Eye's inherent ability. Its effect involves creating a blood dragon from nothingness using Yinsukuyo, energy. This dragon inherits the Blood Dragon Eye's ability to manipulate blood dragons, possessing a physical form capable of physical attacks, making it a short-lived miniature Gundam. When the dragon successfully strikes an enemy, it activates the Blood Dragon Eye's other effect, blood control. This control over the enemy's bloodstream stagnates, hindering circulation. Without assistance to release the eye power, the affected person will experience necrosis within 30 minutes due to arterial blood blockage, leading to death. Of course, this is somewhat useless. The resulting mud dragon possesses immense size and impact force. Being struck by it without any defense is essentially the same as being hit by a dump truck traveling at 180 km per hour. Besides the dragon truck's launch, its core ability lies in the fact that once the blood dragon strikes, the caster can manipulate the opponent's blood to seal their chakra, rendering them defenseless and turning them into a blood slave. On paper, this taijutsu appears powerful, and indeed it is. However, like all sealing techniques, it suffers from a serious flaw: it must hit the target. Ninjas aren't stationary targets, they can run. Even a normal Jonin's L-shaped movement at speed has a small chance of dodging a direct hit from a dump truck. Even more powerful and extreme individuals can stop the dragon truck with their bare hands. Fortunately, this technique also has a special effect that synergizes with another of Uchiha Chi's taijutsu. Its appearance is extremely deceptive. The Blood Dragon and the Red Dragon released by the White Jiki no Tomo are essentially identical in appearance. Uchiha Chi, the creator of the Blood Dragon, can further disguise its appearance to resemble the Red Dragon of the White Jiki no Tomo. Anyone who hasn't been repeatedly struck by Uchiha Chi's eye techniques would have little idea which one they were struck by. Eye Technique, Blood Dragon 9 Sealing. Senjutsu, Sharingan, White Jiki no Tomo. These two eye techniques, one real, one fake, one illusion, one real. This is how the current effect unfolded. When Minato saw the Blood Dragon, he subconsciously misunderstood, believing he had been struck by another of Uchiha Chi's eye techniques, Senjutsu, Sharingan, White Jiki no Tomo. But, in reality, it wasn't. Minato was bewildered. For a second, even with his CPU fuming, he couldn't figure out when he had been struck by Uchiha Chi's genjutsu, and why he had attacked him. He simply couldn't tell. He couldn't tell. Then, under the control of Uchiha Chi's wide-open left eye, the Blood Dragon surged forth, stirring up a raging wind. With a roar and a raised head, it lunged at Minato, crushing him to the ground and throwing him backward, creating a 10-meter-long chasm. Bang! The ground was instantly riddled with spiderwebs. Only then did Uchiha Chi breathe a sigh of relief, the dust finally settling. But in the blink of an eye, the Yellow Flash, who had commanded the respect of everyone present for his exceptional strength, was suddenly attacked and knocked to the ground by the short attendant who had followed him. The sudden change was like a tornado. Before anyone in the hall could even register what had happened, they felt only a surge of wind, a flash of red light, and then everything returned to calm. The only difference was that the young man with the dazzling golden hair had collapsed in the corner of the hall. The wall behind him trembled, gray stones tumbling, and a dense web of cracks covered the entire wall. At that moment, Ryuzaji Sudani had just opened his eyes, forced shut by the rising wind, when he saw Namake's Minato, the formidable ninja he had placed his hopes on, the force behind his comeback, slumped in the corner, his eyes wide open, his lips bleeding, as if about to ask a question. Then, with a look of disbelief, he collapsed, head tilted sideways. And the culprit behind all this was this blind, black-haired brat who looked like a follower? Wait, he seems to have eyes again? Did he kill the Yellow Flash Minato? Ryuzaji Sugu swallowed hard, raised his head in horror, and looked at Uchiha Chi standing in the center of the hall, not far in front of him. In one hand, He was holding the 2.7-meter-long Thunder God sword, Butsu Mitsuheim, and the other hand was slowly lowering from his face. His face was full of coldness. Looking at the young man in front of him who had killed people without saying a word, inexplicably, a chill emerged from the bottom of his heart, making Ryuzaji Suga feel all over his body. In the more than 20 years of peace, he had never witnessed such a cruel fight between ninjas. But today, from morning to night, he truly realized what kind of cold and ruthless creatures ninjas are. And as a group of nobles riding on the heads of ninjas, what kind of danger are they putting themselves in? At this moment, Uchiha let out a deep breath and turned his gaze with a cold glance towards Ryuzaji Sugu, who stood not far away. From meeting this man and observing his actions, he could almost guess what kind of person he was and what he wanted. He was undoubtedly a greedy fool, oblivious to his own greed, a man who cherished his life but was willing to risk it all. Now, in Yunming City, after the castle tower had collapsed at the hands of Old Purple and the daimyo had been confirmed as a fake, the city's most respected figure had shifted from the daimyo of the Land of Lightning to the daimyo's son, the young prince of the Land of Lightning. And for the ninjas who wanted to attack the daimyo of the Land of Lightning to achieve their own goals, their target had shifted from the unknown real daimyo to this man. If nothing unexpected happened, tonight, all the whispers of conspiracy, frame-ups, and kidnappings surrounding the daimyo of the Land of Lightning would fall on this unfortunate individual. The daimyo of the Land of Lightning cares nothing for his son's life, just as he doesn't care about the relatives who perished in the castle tower's collapse. He remains missing. Knowing the impending danger, Ryuzaji Sudani is desperate, and therefore agrees to Minato's terms. In other words, to survive the night, he has no choice but to cooperate with Minato. His quest is simple and straightforward, simply to stay alive. For this, he can forego his position as lord, the respect of the daimyo, his father's life, even his own dignity. And the national treasure, the sword, in Uchiha's hand. From this perspective, perhaps he's a wise man? Thinking of this, Uchiha narrowed his eyes slightly and walked towards Ryuzaji Sudani. Click, click. The sound of footsteps was clearly reflected in Ryuzaji Sudani's ears, making him shiver. Looking at the young man in front of him getting closer and closer, the footsteps seemed to be stepping on his heart, creaking. He seemed to be able to hear the shrill whistling sound of his own heart, which was beating twistedly and anxiously under the heavy burden. Stop, stop. You, don't come over here again, get out, no, go away. Get away from me. Ryuzaji Sugaya stared at the young man who was slowly approaching with sweat dripping down his face. His face turned pale in an instant and he asked tremblingly, who the hell are you? Me. Uchiha smiled and stared at the other person with deep eyes. Look at these eyes, believe me, you must have heard of my name. Hearing this, Ryuzaji Sugaya couldn't help but raise his head and look at those eyes. The pair of scarlet blood eyes that lit up in the hall were far more weird than the ordinary Sharingan, more scarlet, more gloomy, more evil, and even more beautiful. Those eyes, are you from the Uchiha clan, the Uchiha who appeared in the Land of Lightning? As if conjuring an extremely terrifying thought, Ryuzaji Sudani's eyes widened, his head raised in horror. Staring at the young man before him, his mouth suddenly dry and breathless, as if his neck were being strangled by an invisible, giant hand. Finally, he blurted out a reply that made his scalp tingle. You are Uchiha. He was the Uchiha who appeared in Yunming City, the leader of the undead evils, the one who brazenly launched an assassination attempt on the daimyo of the Land of Lightning and declared war averted. He was also the Uchiha who had single-handedly fought 3 cage-level masters in Hell Valley, who had slain one and severely injured another, and who, on top of that, could even injure the 3rd Raikage. Uchiha. But, wasn't that a fake? Why did a real Uchiha appear before him? Was the rumor true, or was it false? At that moment, Ryuzaji Sugu stood frozen in confusion, his eyes fixed on the approaching young man. It was as if he were seeing double. Who was he? He was Uchiha. And who was that shorter kid who had assassinated his father? Which one was real, and which one was fake? What was going on? He couldn't tell. He truly couldn't. Looking at the young master of the Land of Lightning whose expression gradually became dazed and terrified, Uchiha calmly walked past him without even glancing at Ryuzaji Sugu. However, as they passed by, he slowed his pace slightly and stated calmly and indifferently, the era of the daimyo is over. At this point, Uchiha paused, hinting at something but actually just to pretend to be cool. You are a smart person, you should know what to do for me, if you still want to live. After Uchiha Chi brushed past him, the pressure on Ryuzuji Sugu suddenly eased. He took a deep breath, turned around abruptly, and looked at Uchiha Chi in a daze. He wanted to say something, to prove something, to empty himself and come up with something, but at this moment KKXIU, a furious roar erupted from beside Ryuzuji Sugu, startling him. Then, his pupils suddenly constricted, a look of dun flashing in his eyes. How dare you? Killing people in public, threatening the young master, you little brat, do you think we don't exist? With a swish, a flash of sword light flashed brightly. Clad in gray-white armor, a shaved head, and a face filled with anger, a warrior stepped out of the crowd and suddenly leaped high. In mid-air, one hand pressed the scabbard at his waist, the other grasped the hilt. In an instant, sword flowers flashed, like blooming flowers on the other shore. A sharp, beautiful, and resolute sword was swiftly drawn, slashing straight at the defenseless Uchiha Chi's back. This sword was called Secret Sword, IAI/. Chapter 296, The Secret Sword Swallow returns. The daimyo's backhand, the samurai rise up. The blade flashed, shrouded in a chill, and in a narrow gap, a 10-meter-long shadow slashed across the air, its tip nearly touching Uchiha Chi's back. Got it, the samurai with a kimono haircut stared at the imp's vest with excitement, a cruel smile curling his lips. The secret sword, IAI/, was a sword technique developed by the Iron Country's warriors, drawing upon chakra attachment techniques, instant body movement techniques, ninjutsu, and traditional samurai techniques. The essence of this strike was speed. Faster than breathing, faster than sight, faster than consciousness. Before the ninja could even form a hand seal, the incredibly swift swordplay severely wounded him. Without his ninjutsu advantage, the ninja was nothing more than a lamb to the slaughter. Under this blow, the samurai with a kimono haircut could almost see the impertinent imp falling to the ground, vomiting blood. His expression grew excited, his eyes dancing with joy. Even the thrusts of his arms were incredibly powerful and brimming with strength. At that moment, he felt as though his strength had nearly reached the peak of his life. However, at that moment, the imp with his back to him suddenly turned his head and asked calmly, indifferently, "What are you expecting?" As soon as the words fell, everything before the ceremonial warrior's eyes suddenly distorted, then returned to clarity. The next moment, he abruptly stopped, his grip on the hilt trembling uncontrollably. The blade he thought he was swinging at Uchiha Chi was actually pressed against his neck. Just a little more force would have severed his head and torn him apart. Is this an illusion? The ceremonial warrior's eyes froze. Before this, he had never met the Uchiha's eye. The only time they had met was when the imp had glanced at him. That's when it happened. I understand. He wanted to use this eye technique to confuse my judgment. True is false, false is true, and in reality, with the speed of this sword, he wouldn't have been able to react. So that's the case. The samurai with the tufted hair looked fierce. Veins on his arms bulged instantly, and he gripped the hilt tightly, thrusting it across his neck. Puff. Blood spurted high, and the head and body were instantly torn apart. This scene stunned Uchiha Chi, and he couldn't help but wonder. No, man, I've already dispelled the illusion. What are you doing? Looking at the headless body that fell to the ground with a thud, Uchiha Chi blinked, almost scratching his head. The root cause of this scene, in fact, came from a line of subtitles that suddenly floated before his eyes. The Iron Country warrior, Tetsujimaru, Tsubuki's father, direct disciple of the samurai general Mifune, has murdered you and intends to cut you down with his secret sword, IAI/. That was before Tetsuya drew his sword. The subtitles about his talent hadn't appeared for a long time. Having just faced Minato, Uchiha Chi had assumed the battle was over and his talent was being calculated. He had been wondering if he would unleash a powerful sealing technique or unleash the Flying Thunder God technique all at once. But that was clearly not the case. Minato hadn't been on guard against him, and hadn't harbored any negative emotions towards him from beginning to end. Therefore, the battle with Minato hadn't triggered the heart of steel. The subtitles that appeared after that were from Tetsuya, the suddenly rising supporting character from the Land of Iron. Upon seeing the subtitles, Uchiha Chi unhurriedly opened his snake-eyed Sharingan, expanding his 360-degree field of vision. Using illusions, he silently distorted Tetsuyu's senses, causing him to hallucinate. Just now, when Tetsuya was on the verge of suicide, he had released his pupil technique and was about to extract some information from him, to ask why he had done so. Who could have imagined that this samurai would be so resolute? Just then, a line of subtitles appeared, announcing the result. Dang, you counterattacked Tsutomaru with a subtle illusion, disorienting him. You gain a random skill from him, Secret Sword, IAI/B, Mastery. This counterattack is powerful, with a critical hit bonus, combined with your proficiency in Uchiha-style swordsmanship, Sun Halo Dance, the all martial arts affix, and the various swordsmanship styles you've acquired previously. This bonus grants you another critical hit bonus. The final skill effect is upgraded to Secret Sword, Swallow Return, A+, Mastery. The basic swordsmanship handbook feature is unlocked and can be expanded for viewing. He didn't know how this talent was calculated, but the result was ridiculously fast after defeating this minor character. The reward window popped up almost immediately after defeating him. Against stronger opponents, the speed of the attack would be delayed, like constipation. Uchiha Chi was somewhat confused about the calculation mechanism of this talent, but he didn't think too much about it, focusing on the reward for the first double critical hit. Secret Sword, Swallow Return. As he absorbed the knowledge flowing into his mind, Uchiha Chi felt a slight realization. Among birds, swallows are renowned for their flying speed. Secret Sword, Swallow Return, can slash swallows with a single sword strike. This sword technique is characterized by its speed, faster than the single strike IAI attack and faster than the soaring dragon flash of the hidden sword school. 3 sword strikes are unleashed in a flash, 1 blocks the path ahead and disrupts the enemy, 1 strikes a sure kill, and 1 strikes a final slash. 3 sword strikes simultaneously. This skill is beyond the reach of ordinary humans, a skill beyond their reach. That's quite interesting. Thinking of the power of this sword technique and its potential in the ninja world, Uchiha Chi couldn't help but glance at the Thunder God's sword, Butamikayao, in his hand, and a smile appeared on his face. However, his smile was not a big deal. To the eyes of the others around him, it was extremely horrifying. In their eyes, the young man stood in a pool of blood, brutally forcing a determined samurai to commit suicide. At this moment, his face flushed slightly, and he took a deep breath, as if unsatisfied. He glanced at the 2.7-meter-long sword in his hand again, and a strange and evil smile spread across his face. He seemed to be enjoying the pleasure of slaughtering his opponent. The samurai surrounding Ryuzaji Sudani exchanged glances, each seeing a flicker of horror in their colleagues' eyes. Then, damn it, that evil Uchiha brat actually killed Master Tetsudamaru. A samurai in the crowd, his face trembling, gripped his sword tightly, striding forward with his shoulders, his eyes alight with determination. Stand firm, today, warriors, for the daimyo, everyone, kill, a furious roar, for the daimyo. Not for the young master, descended. In an instant, the situation on the field suddenly shifted. Chi. 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 The gauze connecting the beams and pillars on all 4 sides of the hall was simultaneously torn apart. From behind it, a dense mass of samurai wielding swords, unattached wandering ninja clutching kunai fixed with detonating tags, and 3 of the daimyo's guardian ninja, wearing kumagakure forward protectors and the word show tattooed on their arms. At that moment, a vast crowd of people rushed towards Uchiha Chi, who stood in the center of the hall. The 3 guardian nin, each a member of the elite genin class, suddenly looked cold. They went against the flow of the crowd, quietly drew their kunai, raised their hands to form hand seals, and rushed sideways towards Ryuzaji Sugu behind Uchiha Chi. Seeing this, the Uchiha raised an eyebrow slightly. Wandering ninja, Ronin, samurai from the Iron Country, and these ninja with strong chakra, is this the daimyo of the Land of Lightning's backup plan? In an instant, he realized the trap he had been trapped in. Guessing the daimyo of the Land of Lightning's sinister intentions, and the trap set for all those who wanted to kill him, Uchiha Chi's face suddenly turned cold. At this moment, as if surrounded by hungry ghosts, he was enveloped by a dense swarm of cold swords and knives. Kunai with detonating tags flew towards him. The sounds of footsteps, shouts of killing, curses, rebukes, and the sound of drawn swords merged into one. Gazing at everything around him, his vision gradually filled with faces that ranged from greedy to frantic, from angry to stern. Uchiha Chi let out a deep breath. Facing this group of ants-like, clueless creatures, he plunged the Butsu Yuhan into the ground. Then, a pair of irritated and furious scarlet eyes suddenly opened. You, too noisy. Chapter 297, The Evil God's Ritual, wielding the Divine Sword. A roar filled with rage erupted from Uchiha Chi's mouth. Then, As everyone watched intently, a wind suddenly picked up in the center of the hall. Wisps of blazing wind, visible to the naked eye, erupted from them, wisps of flame reflecting the myriad forms of life. Then, a swirling storm of flames surged skyward. Fireworks and thunder, the color of the sun, erupted from the Budo spirit, which was embedded in the ground. With a sword as its backbone, 26 bones, ranging from bright yellow to crimson, materialized, forming a massive dragon spine. From this spine, flaming shoulder blades, humerus, sternum, mandible, zygomatic bone, nasal bone, frontal bone, and parietal bone emerged. Bone after bone rapidly formed and grew, eventually forming a terrifying, hideous, half-skeleton giant, blazing with heat yet radiating a chilling chill. The skull, engulfed in flames, drooped slightly, its hollow eye sockets gleaming with golden rays like the sun at noon. Under this gaze, a mingled melding of heat and cold, everyone in the hall simultaneously paused their movements, their heads tilted upwards in a daze. Their flesh seemed wound up, stiff as a toy. What the hell is this? They swallowed deeply, their heads tilted upwards, staring blankly at the 30-meter-tall, half-skeletal giant, raising one hand and spreading its bony palm. The next moment, their vision was suddenly engulfed by a sudden, pale glow. Boom. Immediately, a thunderous roar like the beating of a drum exploded in their ears. Then, everything went black. They could see nothing, hear nothing, feel nothing, touch nothing. In their final moments, they felt as if struck by a lightning spear, piercing heaven and earth from the sky. The sensation of scorching heat flashed for a fleeting moment, and everything vanished into thin air. They were instantly vaporized. Literally. Yet, this was merely the first ripple of the skeleton Susanoo summoning the true form of the divine artifact known as the Sword of the Thunder God. At that moment, outside, boom, like countless wheels rolling, the rapidly converging thunder instantly shattered the dreams of countless people in Yunming City. Awakened by the relentless rumble of thunder, they rose from their beds, walked to the windows and doors, and just as they were about to glance up, they were completely shaken by the sight before them, a beam of lightning that illuminated the entire city, a beam that countless people would never forget. It connected with the thick clouds of the heavens, piercing through the vast palace built around the mountain at the edge of the inner city. Then, it shook the earth. The earth instantly lifted, the mountains crumbled, and heaven and earth were instantly connected. Pale thunder lingered for a long time, like a spear of lightning connecting heaven and earth. It was as if the thunder god in the sky took a dislike to that mountain and the people in that palace, wanting to uproot and tear them down completely. The earth wave stirred up instantly, and in an instant, a tsunami-like curtain of sand erupted. It covered the sky and the moon. Is that a god? Countless people stared at this scene in amazement, unable to help but think the same thought in their hearts. At this moment, figures rushed out from the streets and merged into a human stream. They stared blankly at the thunder that pierced the sky and the earth, their faces filled with expressions of daze and despair. And at this moment, the leader of the group wandering through the streets of Yunming City, a short man in a black robe, opened his arms. His eyes were pious and bloodshot, his arms were loyal and stiff, cradling the evil god ritual like a gospel. It was as if he wanted to embrace this city and all the loyal people in front of him, and then, he roared in the most loving and tender voice, "Until now, we have been diligent and hard-working, but have suffered a lot. Our souls have been tortured for a long time, but we are still sick and unable to cry. However, this place is extremely evil, and it still enjoys the beauty of respect and luxury. It is just as we see it now. We will witness the light here, we will witness justice here. How greedy you are, sinners, you are full of pain and sin, and you will eventually pay for God's punishment at this moment. You will die with hatred and carry your own abominations with you. The world will experience the most evil hell, and the world will experience miserable wailing, but those who believe in the evil God will eventually be redeemed in this fearless wailing. Believe in the evil God, believe in the evil God. The innocent souls of all realms will eventually overturn everything and cleanse the world in slaughter." Then, the young figure lifted his hood, tore off his black robe, opened his arms and jumped into the sea of people. Held high by the sea of people, his face was filled with a frenzied rage that threatened to consume him. He roared at the top of his lungs, "Kill! Kill! Kill! Samurai can be killed, ninjas can be killed, nobles can be killed, daimyo can be killed, kill them all! Kill 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 kill, pave the table, stain the flowers with blood, use the heads of those in high positions to build the jingwen, and begin the ceremony." Then, "Welcome the evil god, let this country undergo a purge." As this roar fell, the same voice and the same words, driven by those with ulterior motives, spread to every corner of the city. The countless people who walked out of their houses and onto the streets, scattered throughout the alleys, with their heads raised in a daze, their expressions changed, as if they had realized something. Then, they gradually became gloomy, terrifying, and angry. Pairs of tired, bloodshot eyes lit up in the city. A dense stream of people finally began to flow through the alleyway, figures weaving through the sandstorms whipped up by the lightning pillars. Eventually, they merged into a vast sea of people. The five-ridged, four-slope roof of the four-sided building was blasted with a large hole by the lightning bolts summoned from the sky. The grand hall, now stripped of its opulence, was now crumbling. The ground was a shattered mess, as if it had been plowed over and over by a bulldozer 1,000 times. Windows and walls were swept away by the earth flow, blasted away. Only a few pillars barely supporting the roof remained standing, though they were also riddled with cracks. Only 3 breathing figures remained: Uchiha Chi, carrying a half-skeletal Setsuna, Namikaze Minato, protected by a skeletal hand, and Ryuzuji Tsurune, who had arrived at Minato's side, trembling. "You have successfully equipped Setsuna with the artifact, Spirit Sword Budo Mitsuhime." At that moment, the skeleton surrounding Uchiha Chi slowly dissipated into flowing flames, along with a blade brimming with blue lightning held within his bony palm. If one ignored the surroundings, which resembled a Force 8 gale, it was as if nothing had happened. The clamor ceased, and silence returned. Uchiha Chi exhaled a sigh of relief, stretching his shoulders and neck, which had become a little sore from summoning Setsuna to receive the thunderbolt. Snap! Snap! After straightening his bones, he slowly stepped forward, heading towards Minato. At that moment, watching Uchiha Chi approach him again, Ryuzuji Tsurune shuddered, as if he had seen a ghost, and shrank back behind the unconscious Minato Namikaze lying on the ground. "What are you doing?" Ryuzuji Tsurune couldn't help but shudder. Just as he was about to dismount and kneel before the approaching Uchiha Chi, proclaiming loudly, "I'll give you anything, just spare my life," Uchiha Chi glanced at him with disgust and coldly shouted, "Get out of here." At the moment he grasped the divine weapon and called down the thunder, he kicked the man, sending him crashing towards Minato Namikaze, shielding them both with his Susanoo bone palm. This was because he still had some use, a natural successor to the Land of Lightning after its daimyo's death. However, this use was for Minato Namikaze, who would soon become the 4th Hokage. He had no use for it, much less the desire to use it, even though there seemed to be some history between this daimyo's son and the daimyo of the Land of Lightning. And Namikaze Minato. Approaching Namikaze Minato, Uchiha Chi lowered his head and looked at him, sighing softly. At this moment, what frustrates him most is this guy. How to open up a new world and govern it. That's the gameplay of Civilization VI, and a reckless man like me, who only knows how to play action games, simply isn't up to the task. At the very least, it's foreseeable that after the 6th day expires and the daimyo of the Land of Lightning is defeated, a drastic shift will inevitably occur among the major ninja nations. If Minato's vision comes true, and he truly conquers the Land of Lightning and Fire, then the curtain will be raised on the rise of ninjas and the abolition of the daimyo. And a ninja ascending to power, to put it bluntly, is simply a warlord's rule. Allowing a ninja like Uchiha Chi, with 0 governance skills and all his talents maxed out, to become Hokage is hard to say whether it would be a good or bad thing for this world. Moreover, a coup in one nation would inevitably trigger a chain reaction that would ripple through the entire ninja world. Unless shinobi from other nations emulated the Fire Nation's coup, they would have no choice but to pledge loyalty to the daimyo, and the natural way to do so was to attack the other nations where shinobi had ascended to power. If mishandled, the entire ninja world would be affected, triggering a war of even greater intensity, and the ninja world would inevitably enter an era resembling a dark forest. Uchiha Chi knew he wasn't the one to solve such a problem, but under his influence, the ship of a new era had already set sail, and it couldn't be stopped at will. Just like Minato Namikaze at this moment, if Uchiha Chi hadn't encountered him in Yunming City, he wouldn't even have known he would carry out such a drastic coup. Who knows how many others, hidden in the shadows, unknown to Uchiha Chi, were acting on such a plan? However, Uchiha Chi wasn't a qualified helmsman. To lead the ninja world towards a better future, it needs the guidance of those who hold dearest hearts, and countless ninjas with exceptional governance skills, like Megurumi, Minato Namikaze, and Chijiro. Minato Namikaze, Standing before him is the kind of person who can provide for this world. Now, having reached this point, Uchiha Chi can still continue to pursue his own destiny, change, and dominate the world. But Minato absolutely cannot. In the eyes of Uchiha Chi, who has gradually come to understand everything, he is now as rare as a giant panda. Looking at Minato, who lay unconscious on the ground, sleeping peacefully like Peppa Pig, Uchiha Chi sighed softly and said with a hint of apology, "I'm sorry, Minato, you must become Hokage for me and shoulder the entire world." And Uchiha Chi raised his head, peering through the large hole above his head at the figures leaping towards him. His gaze suddenly turned cold. I must be the one to wield the sword. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298, Cut Off the Ties and the Enemy of Liu. The pale lightning spears piercing the heavens and earth gradually vanished, but the vast hole that had pierced through the thick clouds remained visible in the sky. Swirling black clouds slowly rotated clockwise around the hole. Suddenly, a massive full moon, suspended in the night sky, passed through the deep hole, casting a brilliant, white light. Like a pillar of moonlight, it poured down upon the world, illuminating the young man in the center of the hall, making his figure appear like a god. However, the gentle moonlight drifting slowly across his face brought not warmth, but a tingling, tense feeling rising from the depths of his heart, a sense of utter danger, and the sight of a bow stretched to its limit. He sensed the terrifying chakra auras leaping towards him from outside the hall. He sensed the familiar auras of two-tailed beasts alone. Furthermore, there were countless beings, each one as powerful as a tailed beast's Jinchuriki, their number difficult to determine. Such a connection of auras, the emanating chakra fluctuations even caused the surrounding air to partially stagnate. Uchiha Chi took a deep breath, his expression instantly becoming solemn. What are you looking at? On the nearby ruins, Ryuza Jisugu looked fearfully at the silent Uchiha Chi. His face flushed, then paled, his hands tightly gripping the hem of his luxurious kimono, his heart growing increasingly uncertain. He couldn't help but ask, "What are you talking about? What exactly do you want to do? You left me behind, and what do you want?" Turning his head, Uchiha Chi gave him a cold glance. Without waiting for the man to finish his words, he immediately picked up a samurai sword stuck in the ruins and swung it casually. Suddenly, a crescent-shaped blade flashed with a cold, bright light. Clang. Immediately, Ryuza Jisugu stared in horror at his right arm as it flew through the air. His expression shifted from confusion to astonishment, then to shock, and then, utterly contorted. Ugh! Tears streamed down his face as Ryuza Jisugu glared at Uchiha Chi in terror. My hand. My hand. You cut my hand off, you? This was just a little advance warning. If you keep yelling, the next blow will be your head. Uchiha Chi stared at him coldly and spoke indifferently. Now, remember what I'm going to say next? As soon as the words fell, Ryuza Jisugu instantly quieted down, as if to stop a child crying at night. I'm listening. No, I'm remembering. His face was pale, and he gritted his teeth, enduring the pain and nodding vigorously. Uchiha Chi nodded, then removed his black robe. Sure enough, he saw two flying thunder god seals marked with a sort of ninja love on its shoulders. He shook his head and tossed the robe aside. Then, he slowly lowered himself to a crouch, silently gazing at Minato beneath him. After a moment, Uchiha Chi sighed, reached out, and removed the Konoha forehead protector from Minato's forehead. He then pulled an ordinary kunai from his ninja tool bag. Grasping the kunai, Kasha. The kunai's sharp blade instantly pierced the steel forehead protector, slashing across the Konoha symbol. Then, he fastened the forehead protector around his own forehead. This was the first time Uchiha Chi, who had never worn a Konoha forehead protector before, and who had even casually discarded the one given to him by Burame Ryoma, had so carefully tied it around his forehead. This also meant that he acknowledged the bond between his family and himself, his family and his village, and the village and himself, and all the various Konoha ninjas he had met along the way. The Uchiha, or Uchimaru, Burame Ryoma, Namikaze Minato, Kushina, Chen Lao. At the same time, it also meant that he would sever these bonds, becoming a Konoha rebel ninja walking in the darkness. Before the lightless darkness of a fierce battle to the death, he would fight for these people, for all the love he had received so far. And, He would lash out at this inhumane world until a perfect ending that would bring tears to your eyes. Listen, Uchiha Chi turned his head and glanced at Ryuzaji Sugu on the side, and said in a cold voice, "Tonight, Uchiha Chi attacked Minato Namikaze, the envoy sent by Konoha to the Land of Lightning, and betrayed Konoha. He betrayed the village and the family. You must spread this news. In exchange, I will ensure that you will not die tonight." Hearing this, Ryuzaji Sugu suddenly felt like a thorn in his throat, not knowing how to comment. However, compared to this news, he cared more about his own life. Under Uchiha Chi's gaze, he felt cold all over, as if a cold snake was crawling up his back. In such a situation, how could he dare to say the word no? Ryuzaji Sudani looked timid, gasping for breath, and asked anxiously, What should I do? To what extent? And how? It seems that he is asking how to implement it and what means to use to achieve the goal, but in fact it doesn't matter. As long as he can get out of the current danger, with his power, there are naturally many ways to achieve his goals. What he really wants to ask is, what should he do to survive? At this moment, Uchiha Chi raised his head and narrowed his eyes, sensing the terrifying chakra fluctuations approaching at an ever faster pace. He stood up, raised his hand, and pointed at the unconscious Namikaze Minato. "Carry him on our backs, get out of here, and hide. Use your life to protect him from any harm, even if it's just a fall. Then, when he wakes up, he'll understand everything and take you away from this chaotic city, until the day comes when the daimyo dies and you inherit the throne." At this moment, in the increasingly chaotic Yunming city, kill, 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 amid the roars of the civilians of the Land of Lightning, who had temporarily become members of the evil god cult and were roaming the streets and alleys, their voices growing louder and louder, and on the huge buildings surrounding the mountain, in the night wind rushing through, figures stepped on suspension bridges, iron ropes, rooftop platforms, and the mirror. Like cliff faces, leaping and leaping, transforming into shadows of the night, rushing towards the center of the turmoil, the huge palace on the edge of the inner city. At that moment, a young man, still wearing sunglasses even at night, his body swathed in bandages, leaving only his face exposed, resembling a mummy, had landed on a mountaintop platform with a group of fully armed elite Kumagakure soldiers, blocking the path of the other two groups. Killer B frowned at the two men across from him, each with their own followers, and asked in a cold voice, "Sangakure's Scorching Release Ninja, Yakira, and Iwagakure's Four Tails Jinchuriki, Old Shizuku, what are you doing here, tonight?" The Kumagakure leaders knew someone might attack the young master of the Land of Lightning. But they had informed Killer B in advance and made arrangements. Things here weren't Killer B's responsibility. His responsibility was to maintain law and order and suppress the inexplicable riot in the city below. But, after he saw the pillar of lightning that pierced the sky, the memories of the dead suddenly began to attack Killer B. He remembered clearly and painfully that last time, he was struck by a lightning spear that pierced the heavens and earth, leaving him in his current state. Now, upon seeing this lightning pillar that bore a striking resemblance to that ultimate lightning release jutsu, Killer B's first reaction was, could it be that Uchiha Chi, who had been killed and disappeared into Hell Valley, is alive? Eager to investigate, Killer B immediately led his men to the scene, only to encounter these two individuals. Tsunagakure's Yakira and Iwagakure's old Murasaki. Could it be that they were the ones who intended to attack the daimyo's son? Killer B narrowed his eyes dangerously and glanced across. At that moment, the two opposing factions were also startled upon seeing each other. Yakira of Tsunagakure and Murasaki of Iwagakure had both come for the daimyo's son, but their motives were slightly different. Chiyo-san has already infiltrated. For the future of Tsunagakure, we must assassinate the daimyo's son tonight and throw the blame on Konoha. With this thought in mind, Yakira quietly placed his hand behind his back on his ninja tool bag, his gaze growing dangerous. We must stop the others here and ensure the mission's success. Murasaki, on the other side, shared the same sentiment. However, Yakira's motivation differed. He had launched the attack on the castle tower during the day, only to recall upon returning to base that Ryuzaji Sugu, the daimyo's son, had been rather stiff in his attitude towards his benefactor. When he informed Huangtu of this, Huangtu acted decisively, suspecting a flaw in the mission. To prevent the truth from being exposed, the two men, embracing the principle of better to kill the wrong person than to let him go, immediately decided to eliminate Ryuzaji Sudani tonight. However, since Lao Tzu was publicly protecting the castle tower, he couldn't act directly. Therefore, Huangtu had secretly infiltrated to act in his place. Now, The three factions face off here, each quietly unleashing their own lethal moves against the daimyo's son. B. Try not to get into a fight with these two. They're very dangerous. In the spirit world, the eight-tailed Gyuki warned Killer B with a serious expression. Even with my chakra to help you recover, your injuries aren't fully healed yet. Fighting at this moment, your chances of victory are uncertain. I understand. Killer B let out a deep breath. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't have underestimated these two. As a perfect Jinchuriki, he was confident he could simultaneously suppress both Yakura and Laoyu. But now, struck from the inside by the S-rank ninjutsu lightning release, Kirin combined with his own largest scale-tailed beastball explosion, the double blow left him alive but left him with hidden injuries that would require time to heal. Fighting with injuries, if pushed to extremes, could cause heart rhythm disturbances and potentially kill him. Therefore, facing these two dangerous individuals at this moment, Killer B felt a certain amount of pressure. For a moment, the atmosphere was tense. Neither the Sand Village nor the Rock Village factions were willing to strike first, seeking to hold the other at bay. Killer B desperately wanted to leave to see what had happened, to find out if Uchiha Chi was still alive, but his duties kept him stuck between them, unable to move forward. However, at that moment, a deafening roar erupted from the distant inner city. The three turned their heads and saw the palace of the daimyo's son, their target, crumbling into the earth and rock, a mountain rising from the ground. Like a mountain collapsing, the massive earthen platform, bearing a terrifying object beyond human imagination, blazing with flames, crashed down towards the heart of Yunming City's bustling inner city. In the field, Laozi, who was most familiar with this scene, suddenly narrowed his eyes. That is Wang Tu's most powerful move, Earth Escape, Earthquake Core. Who is he fighting with? And what is that thing? Seeing this scene, the three opposing parties could no longer sit still. They looked at each other, snorted coldly, and then they all turned to the side at the same time, accelerated at the same time, and quickly leaped towards the inner city that exploded and burned instantly. Chapter 299, Crushing Earth, 1 against 3. As the three factions confronted each other outside, within the palace outside Yunming City, Uchiha Chi let out a breath, taking one last glance at the deserted ruins. Then, he closed his eyes, now sore from activating Susanoo. Though his leisure time was brief, he decided to rest while he could. After all, the fusion of his eyes wasn't yet complete. The surroundings seemed mired in a quagmire of silence. The place he stood in felt like a narrow, shrouded space where countless evil spirits awaited. The air was thick and hot, as if it could plunge anyone within into an endless hell. It didn't take long before a heavy sound of footsteps echoed. "Are all dead?" A burly man in the red Iwagakure uniform suddenly leaped down from the palace roof, peering down at the ruins below with a frown. This man was none other than the mighty Iwagakure village warrior who had come to put an end to everything and utterly slay Ryuzaji. Yellow Earth. But when his gaze fell on the young man standing amidst the ruins in the center of the hall, he jumped. Who is this guy? He saw the young man wearing a /4 protector from a Konoha rebel, a ragged high-necked short-sleeved shirt with a black lining, a purple rope tied upside down at his waist, and cropped trousers held together by tattered gray leggings. In his hand, he clutched a tattered katana. His attire was Syrian style, like a battle-worn ninja who had just escaped from 3 months of fierce fighting in the land of rain. However, when Wang Tu saw the red and white round family emblem reflected on the back of the clothes, and the handsome profile of the black-haired boy, his brows jumped suddenly, and his eyes suddenly flashed with surprise. This outfit, and this face, Uchiha Chi, there is no doubt that this guy is the real deal. Wang Tu immediately revealed a cold and knowing smile. So that's how it is. After surviving the wreckage, you heard about the little brat and rushed to Yunming City in a hurry, and you did such a treasonous thing. Looking at the scene around him, there was not even a living person, as if the ruins were trampled by 100 elephants, and Uchiha Chi standing alone in the middle of it. He could not think of any other explanation, but, that's exactly what I want. The little brat in front of him was obviously here for revenge, but this action indirectly helped him kill the son of the daimyo of the Land of Lightning, and Wang Tu sneered. A fierce light flashed in his eyes, and immediately raised his hands to form 2 seals, and layers of rock spread over his arms. Then, with a crushing movement of his footsteps, he instantly crushed the bricks and tiles of the temple roof beneath his feet. He plummeted down from the top, then swung his arm and punched out at Uchiha Chi. Suddenly, his fist, enhanced in hardness and weight by the earth escape, rock punch technique, instantly carried the momentum and thrust of his foot onto the ground and smashed into Uchiha-Chi's forehead. If the blow hit, a human head simply couldn't withstand such gravity and would explode like a watermelon. "Your head, I'll take it," Wang Tu shouted, his eyes wide open, and he swung his fist suddenly, pushing forward with his fist, which was lifted by the wind. Bang! The blow hit instantly, making a dull bang, as if it were a wall. However, Wang Tu's expression changed after he had delivered the punch. His punch had indeed landed, but it didn't reach Uchiha-Chi's head. Instead, it lingered on a layer of blazing flames that suddenly appeared in front of him, a color between bright yellow and crimson, resembling a human skeleton. The next moment, the young man, who had been closing his eyes, suddenly opened them. His indifferent and resolute gaze met Wang Tu's somewhat bewildered one. Then, suddenly, a blazing flame suddenly rose from Uchiha-Chi's side, instantly forming and swinging out. His long black hair, which hung to his waist, was lifted up and flung to the left, dancing wildly. A surge of chakra, like blazing flames, surged around him. The next moment, before Wang Tu could comprehend what was happening, he felt something tightly binding him, constricting him, and his feet lifted off the ground. He seemed to raise his head, and when he saw the object around him, his pupils suddenly constricted. It was a skeletal hand composed purely of chakra, condensed from blazing flames. Streaks of exposed fascia trembled and grew incessantly. He was held captive by this skeletal hand, tightly entangled by the adductor palliacis fascia and the palmar interosseous fascia between its palms, pulling the muscle fibers together to create a terrifying grip. Then, as Uchiha silently and fiercely clenched his palm, the skeletal hand followed suit, squeezing it into his palm. Puff! Like squeezing a mushroom, Wang Tu's complexion instantly contorted as his cheeks, head, body, and bones exploded in an instant. Bang! However, there was no blood. Instead, a layer of fine sand and earth fell from the gaps between the skeletal palm and fingers. An earth clone, Uchiha narrowed his eyes slightly, tilting his head to look at a beam on the side of the hall. Then, his gaze sharpened, and the massive skeletal hand, connected to the ring-shaped skeleton, instantly swung out. Boom! The beams and pillars were instantly shattered by the bony hand, and from behind them, a burly, round-faced man in an Iwagakure uniform, backflipped out. He leaped out, mid-air, his hands forming hand seals without pause, Yin Zi Si. Then, clasping his hands together, he formed the tail seal of Si. Earth-style, rock collapse. With the activation of this jutsu, the already crumbling wall collapsed from the roof in an instant. Beams and pillars toppled, the ceiling collapsed, and rubble and thick bricks rained down from the sky, pelting Uchiha in the center of the hall. What's the point of this jutsu? Just using earth style to create dust to avoid a Sharingan gaze. Faced with this jutsu, Uchiha didn't dodge or evade. He could tell that the other party had pre-programmed this jutsu, releasing chakra from the touch of his foot as he landed on the roof. However, this jutsu didn't even bother him to interrupt. Earth style, rock collapse. This was the same earth style jutsu that had crushed Obito to death during the Battle of Canopy Bridge, the root cause of the subsequent tragedy. However, this wasn't a dense forest, nor were there any boulders large enough to crush Obito. And Uchiha wasn't Uchiha Obito. The strength of the earth-style jutsu used to collapse the hall wouldn't even scratch the ring-shaped skeleton. So, why would they do this? At that moment, the hall collapsed instantly, sending up a cloud of dust. Uchiha didn't move, allowing himself to be buried. As he'd expected, the falling beams and masonry proved incapable of breaking Susanu's defenses, even with a first-stage ring-shaped skeleton. Bang! Blazing flames erupted throughout his body, and the skeleton expanded slightly, sending all surrounding debris, dirt, and broken wood flying. Uchiha stepped out of the ruins and surveyed his surroundings. While the dense dust prevented direct eye contact with his Sharingan, it still allowed him to clearly discern a person's chakra and determine their position. However, through the dust, 3 chakra clusters appeared within his field of vision. Uchiha was stunned. Before he could determine whether they were the real person or 3 clones, a flash of sword light suddenly shone, instantly crossing 100 meters from beyond the dusty area. Secret sword, IAI/. At the end of his sight, a figure, with a sudden, swift movement, unleashed its scabbard, tearing through the vast expanse of dust. Like a bulldozer, it sped across 100 meters, closing in on him. Then, the sword was unsheathed. The dazzling sword light, reflecting the moonlight, slashed directly at the Susanoo skeleton surrounding Uchiha. A swish. Sparks flew from the skeleton. The next moment, a blade tip sliced through Susanu's frame and pierced through. Crack. Dense cracks appeared on the skeleton. Uchiha Chi's pupils shrank, and he instinctively raised his katana, swinging back. Clang. The tip of the sword collided with a blade, sparks flying, and the sword narrowly missed Uchiha Chi's throat. Only then did Uchiha Chi see the face of the man before him. A long beard covered his mouth and chin, his head wrapped in bandages, and he wore green, layered armor. This man was surprisingly the Iron Country's samurai general, a cage-level warrior who would later become the captain of the 5th Division's Combat Special Forces during the 4th Shinobi World War. Mifune. Uchiha Chi's heart skipped a beat as a sudden realization dawned on him. He finally understood the origins of the Iron Country samurai who had appeared alongside Ryuzuji Sugu, and why the normally neutral Iron Country samurai were intervening in the Lightning Country incident. There was only one reason: this incident touched upon the very foundation of the samurai nation, the daimyo. Before Uchiha Chi could ponder further, a cold, aged, and hateful female voice suddenly rang out, "Practice, one heart, one body." The next moment, 5 specially crafted steel wires shot out from the corner of the ruins at an incredible speed, binding Uchiha Chi's ring-shaped Susanu. Then, a crackling sound echoed, like a spinning wheel twisting the wires. The 5 wires tightened into the skeleton, causing it to emit a sharp, sizzling sound. Then, an elderly woman, dressed in a loose black robe, a white scarf tied around her chest, and carrying a yellow turban, with a wrinkled face, lavender hair, and a gloomy expression, emerged from the gradually dispersing dust. This woman was none other than the elder of Sand Village, and the current Sand Village envoy, Granny Chiyo. She slowly withdrew a purple-covered scroll from her waist pouch, staring intently at Uchiha Chi as she did so, a cold, sinister smile on her face. Then, she asked, "You are Uchiha Chi, right? I have been looking forward to this day for a long time." Chapter 300. Didn't you eat? Uchiha Chi's gaze suddenly turned cold as he watched the 3 men, each from different factions with different goals, all choose to attack him at the moment they saw him. Kakashi's words had come true. Both Iwagakure and Tsunagakure were now attempting to form an alliance with the Land of Lightning, willing to resort to any means necessary to achieve their ulterior motives. Compared to Hiden, who had previously assassinated the Land of Lightning daimyo in Kumo City under his name, as the true culprit responsible for the devastating losses suffered by Kumagakure and the Land of Lightning during the 3rd Shinobi World War, Uchiha Chi's head was the one that could truly move the Land of Lightning daimyo, and even the 3rd Raikage. Whether it was due to old grudges, strategic plans, or simply a desire to eliminate the other nation's genius as soon as possible to prevent it from becoming a threat in the future, the conflict between the two sides was now completely irreconcilable. With no way out, the only option was war. Son of the 3rd Hokage of Iwagakure Village, Wang Tu, has murderous intent against you. Mifune, General of the Land of Iron, has murderous intent against you. Chiyo, Elder of the Sand Village, has murderous intent against you. 3 subtitles suddenly appeared before their eyes, signaling the imminent start of battle. Now, Mifune, kill him. Chiyo's fingers tugged, tightly binding the skeleton, rendering Uchiha Chi unable to move. Then, turning her head, she shouted angrily at Mifune, who had severed the skeleton with a single blow of her sword. "Stab his heart and you'll disable his fire style." "Quick!" Mifune grunted coldly, gripping the hilt with both hands, veins bulging in his arms as he thrust forward. Zzzz! The longsword instantly brushed against the katana, sending up a shower of sparks. At that moment, looking at the longsword before him, about to sever the blade of the broken blade and plunge into his throat, and the 5 twisted steel wires on the skeleton, those were the wires shot out by 2 puppets Chiyo had created based on Scorpion's parents. These wires possessed exceptional binding and cutting abilities, a killing move called practice, one body. Uchiha Chi's eyes suddenly widened. Within them, 3 pitch-black Magadamus whirled wildly around his eerie, crimson pupils. "It seems you rubbish don't understand your current predicament." He curled his lips coldly, surveying the 3 before him. He shouted in a deep voice, "This is a battle of eyesight. Don't underestimate the Uchiha." The moment his words fell, without hesitation, Uchiha Chi summoned the terrifying creature within those eyes. In the next instant, accompanied by a burst of crimson light from those blood-red pupils, a blazing storm of flames suddenly engulfed him. The skeleton, which had previously only protected Uchiha Chi within a 10-centimeter radius, suddenly blazed with brilliant flames. Immediately, 26 bones, a hue of bright yellow and crimson, rose from the ground behind Uchiha Chi. A half-skeletal Setsuna quickly took shape in the flames, instantly rupturing the steel wires binding it. Then, raising its arm, a bony hand suddenly extended from Mifune's head, slapping the ground in horror. Mifune's eyes widened at the sudden surge of danger. Instinctively, he tapped the ground, drew his sword, leaped sideways, and then swung his sword back to block. Squeak, 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 the blade, grazed by the back of the bony hand, instantly bent into a terrifying arc, emitting a sharp, steely shriek. Then, it straightened, sending Mifune caressing in a parabola. Boom! He crashed into the rubble, then, leaning on his sword, he rolled back. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, tilting his head back slightly, his eyes widening as he stared at Uchiha Chi, who stood motionless in the center of the ruins, and the terrifying figure surrounding him, a creature unbecoming of our time. What the hell is this? The same question rose in the minds of the three present. Chiyo and Huangtu stared at the flaming half-skeleton, a terrifying object that instantly loomed over their heads, a full 30 meters tall. Feeling the cold, terrifying chakra ripples from it, Senshin's heart tightened simultaneously. This brat, Chiyo gritted her teeth, finding it hard to accept. Even though she had been diligently gathering intelligence on Uchiha Chi through various channels, every time he fought, something new would emerge, making it impossible to predict how many hidden tricks this brat had up his sleeve, and how quickly he was improving. No more holding back, Chiyo's face twisted into a fierce grimace. She turned her head and shouted angrily at the two men beside her, "I'll hold him back. You only have one chance. Bring out all your cards, otherwise, it's impossible to kill him." With that, Chiyo suddenly raised her hand, bit her finger, and swiped across the purple-covered scroll she had unfolded. Her eyes suddenly became fierce. White secret technique, the Tenkan Matsu. With a bang, white smoke suddenly appeared, and 10 powerful puppets, inherited from the second Kazakage Salmon as his swan song, appeared in midair. As soon as they appeared, they immediately pierced through the white smoke and flew towards Uchiha Chi to kill. Instantly, a female puppet wielding 2 slashing swords, a blue-faced puppet wielding a pointed rope, 2 red-faced and white-faced puppets that could combine into a high-speed, 4-edged chakra blade, a white-haired puppet that could extend its arms to fire spikes and bombs, and a bull-headed puppet responsible for close combat and protection. All 7 puppets unleashed their own deadly attacks, attacking Susanoo in unison. Unlike Ebizo, who could only command 5 puppets, Chiyo was a gifted puppeteer capable of controlling all of the Chikamatsu 10. However, these outdated gadgets were like a pile of junk before the new age Gundam. Dang! 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 The continuous roar of attacks rang out. But whether it was the cleaving blade that could split rock in two, the pointed rope that could pierce steel, the 4-edged chakra blade that ripped through like a drill, the bomb, or the puppet fist, all that struck the flaming skeleton, like a demon from hell, was a futile spark, leaving no mark. Uchiha Chi simply watched Chiyo's futile attack coldly. He casually raised his hand and swung it. A massive skeletal palm suddenly lashed out. The 7 puppets attacking him in midair were shattered into pieces as if by a fly swatter. Puppet fragments rained down from the air. And at that moment, hidden behind the momentum of the 7 puppets' attack, the true killing move was revealed. Chiyo's face was heavy, her arms crossed, her fingers flexing. Under her control, the 3 Buddha, Dharma, and monk puppets before her rose to their feet in a 3-legged stance, their palms clasped together. Their mouths wide open at Uchiha Chi, their gazes fixed with dazed horror. Puppet technique, 3 treasure suction. The moment the elder's cry rang out, a fierce tornado enveloped the entire area where Uchiha Chi stood. A terrifying suction force was constantly generated around the 3 puppets. This was the same 3 treasure suction technique that Ebizo had used on Uchiha Chi, nearly killing him. This wind-style suction was no less powerful than Shimura Danzo's summoning beast, the Dream Taper. Even Susanoo began to sway under this suction, inching closer to the 3 puppets. Unlike the Dream Taper, this technique couldn't be interrupted by fire-style techniques like Sasuke had used back then. Conventional attacks, even ninjutsu, would be shattered upon impact with the Eye of the Storm. Only Uchiha Chi's original composite ninjutsu, the Hurricane Water Vortex Sword, could barely halt it by counteracting the wind's force through the counter-spinning expansion of wind and water. But now, Uchiha Chi had a more direct method. Faced with this lethal move, his gaze suddenly turned cold, and he clenched his fist fiercely. Under his control, the Susanoo skull swung back with a single blow, then thrust forward horizontally. Boom! Like a locomotive, the fist instantly crushed forward, carrying a gust of wind even more powerful than the three treasures' absorption. Under this terror, so pure and simple, a force unleashed by a single blow from a behemoth, Chiyo couldn't help but widen her cloudy, presbyopic eyes as she watched the three puppets being shattered into tatters by a single blow. Her expression froze. This is too unreasonable. Given the Susanoo bone strength, the three treasures' absorption couldn't instantly crush it. So, if he could crush the three puppets with a single blow at this precise moment, the technique would naturally cease. In other words, Chiyo's technique did indeed delay Uchiha Chi, causing him to feel a buzzing sensation, like a fly buzzing around his face, which he would be unhappy about if he didn't kill it. And it was during this brief moment, held open by Chiyo, that earth escape, rock collapse, with a roar, boom, Uchiha Chi suddenly looked up and saw, at some point, the lowest had leaped onto the peak behind the palace. He clasped his hands together in the sea seal. Then, with 5 fingers spread, he fiercely slammed his palm down upon the massive mountain top. The next moment, a deep fissure, winding its way down from the peak summit, instantly appeared on the mountain top, larger than the palace itself. Dust and smoke then surged upward from the black line, the mountain trembling. The peak above the palace was actually split apart by the loess, plummeting downward. The already gloomy sky suddenly darkened, the faint light of the bright moon extinguished in that moment. Like a meteorite falling from the sky, a mountain top, larger than the entire palace, crashed down. Holy shit, what the hell? Seeing this, Uchiha Chi, who had been delayed by Chiyo, suddenly narrowed his eyes. Even the 30-meter-tall half-body Susanoo seemed dwarfed by this mighty force of nature. With no time to deflect the falling boulder, he could only pull Susanoo back, crossing his arms and shielding his head. Bang, the boulder plummeted. Like a steamroller descending from the sky, Susanoo's bony hands, attempting to support the mountain, were instantly crushed, shattered, and vanished into pure chakra in midair. The immense gravity, along with the ground, erupted in a ring of dust. Crack, crack, crack. Dense spiderweb patterns crept wildly across Susanoo's surface, until the massive rock crumbled around Susanoo. At the cost of Susanoo's entire body cracking, Uchiha Chi barely managed to withstand the impact of the falling rock. This second-stage half-skeleton Susanoo still proved somewhat weak in terms of pure defense, though some conventional ninjutsu could still inflict damage. Wang Tu's meteor jutsu, unleashed through the terrain, dealt a heavy blow to Uchiha Chi, who had only managed to level up his Susanoo to the second stage. Even Uchiha Chi couldn't help but frown, staring at the cracks in his Susanoo with a look of amazement. Without making a sound, Wang Tu had managed a major trick, truly worthy of the man who could control an outer path demon statue for a single second. Just as Uchiha Chi breathed a sigh of relief, preparing to repair his Susanoo, another dark figure swiftly descended from the sky. Earth-style, super heavy rock fist technique, head first, feet up, his bulky form resembling a giant bear. Wang Tu, clad in the crimson uniform of the Iwagakure, roared as he swung his fist down from midair. This jutsu, earth-style, super heavy rock fist technique, was a fusion of the rock fist technique and the super heavy rock technique. During the Fourth Shinobi World War, the third Tsuchika Jinoki had used this technique to shatter seashells with a single punch. In tandem with the fourth Raikage, he had even managed to shatter Uchiha Madara's Susanoo. At this moment, his fist, encased in thick rock, slammed down upon the Susanoo. Shatter it, Wang Tu roared furiously. Under this blow, the half Susanoo, already on the verge of disintegration, finally shattered completely. And at the very moment the Susanoo shattered, secret sword, sky-splitting slash, a cold shout suddenly rang out from behind Uchiha Chi. Mifune, who had been waiting for this moment, now had a cold look in his eyes. He immediately channeled all his chakra into the blade, one hand on the sheath, the other on the sword. He leaned forward, leaped high, and slashed straight down. In an instant, the sword flashed, like a waning moon falling straight down. Mifune grasped the handle with both hands and thrust it out horizontally, veins bulging in his arms and even his forehead. He stared intently at Uchiha Chi and shouted fiercely, "Die!" The moon-like sword light instantly swept out, slashing straight at Uchiha Chi's waist, who had lost the protection of Susanoo. He intended to cut him from shoulder to heart, and then to the waist, completely severing him with a single oblique cut. Such a sword, if it struck, would cripple Uchiha Chi's arms, heart, legs, and feet in one fell swoop, leaving him powerless to fight back. However, faced with a series of attacks, Uchiha Chi only nodded slightly in approval, without moving a single step. It was all fancy, but good. However, an attack that failed to elicit even the slightest reaction from his combat instincts left him feeling utterly drained of energy. The very shoulder Uchiha Chi, about to be struck by the blow, seemed to melt completely into the night, transforming into deep, inky blackness. The Earth-style, Earth Spear, a technique newly acquired through the brand new heart gifted by Kokuzu, quietly activated at that moment. The next moment, the longsword's edge reached him. And then, dang, a resounding, iron-pounding sound echoed through the ruins, lingering for a long time. At that moment, Sanchuan felt his sword, powerful and heavy enough to cut through steel, strike a piece of diamond harder than steel. Then, the longsword, forged from chakra metal, snapped with a sudden, shattering sound, flying past his ear. Mifune was stunned for a moment, and then he saw Uchiha Chi in front of him turn his head slightly, glance at him, and reveal a sarcastic smile. Then, in a tone that made people want to strangle this kid, slam the wall, and ask about his family. What's wrong, didn't you eat? End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.